not. Oh, we're being called to order. Maybe not.
Hello, everyone. We'd like to call the August 3rd, 2010 Board of Supervisors meeting to order at approximately 10:07. Clerk, can you please conduct roll call?
Sure. Supervisor McCowan,
Here.
Supervisor Pinches,
Here.
Supervisor Smith,
Here.
Supervisor Colfax,
Here.
Supervisor Brown.
Here. I'd like to invite our tribal chief.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We're going to start in today, this morning's meeting with public expression. Speakers, I do have speaker form, but if you haven't filled one out, we can ask you to come forward. Public expression are for items not on the agenda. So our first speaker is Paul Titchener. Paul?
Thank you. My name is Paul Titchener. I'm the Mendocino County Superintendent of Schools, and I want to welcome the board. This is, I think, a monumental event, and so congratulations to all of you. The county board also makes an effort to go out when Dr. Colfax was a member of that, started the process of meeting in different school districts throughout the year. So I know it's a lot of work, but thank you for doing it. First, on a tragic basis or a sad basis, I want to acknowledge for the board that I am the acting superintendent or the superintendent for Round Valley Unified as well now. I've had a couple board meetings with the Round Valley board. We lost the brand new superintendent who just started July 1st. So we're dealing with focusing on getting school started and all of the things that around that. But so on a positive note though, I want to just very quickly talk about partnerships. And I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for the efforts that they have put. First, any support that you have given to this library project. Over the 16 years that I've been coming to the Valley, you know, the transition is phenomenal. I want to acknowledge all of the people in this community that have done a great turnaround. It's a great event. I also want to thank the sheriff, Tom Allman, for his efforts. We've had numerous situations on campus over the last few years, and he's been working very diligently with us to get resources to do either an officer on campus or responsiveness to any demands that we have on campus, because those either come from the community onto campus or from campus into the community. And I also want to acknowledge the district attorney, Meredith Lintott, and the tribal council here. They've both been supportive of our starting a student attendance review board in partnership with Willits, a SARB effort. So, and then lastly, just to let you know that legally, my tenure here will continue for at least 3 years. Besides, you know, us having to select a new superintendent very quickly, on March 10th and 11th, the state board appointed the Mendocino County Superintendent as the trustee for the district. So I have a more intense oversight than I have of other school districts. But thank you for coming, and I appreciate all the support that you guys have been providing in partnering in education. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I went over one item on the agenda, skipped it, and I'd like to recognize 3rd District Supervisor John Pinches for some opening remarks.
Well, yeah, first of all, thank you for all coming today. I think I can speak for the board that it's a real joy for everybody. It's a beautiful ride up here and it's a real great opportunity for my colleagues to see and find out a little more about this valley and the great part of Mendocino County. We're going to have a resolution here a little later on about this project here, the Library Commons project. This is a real jewel of Mendocino County, and especially all the volunteerism that has happened here. You know, there's volunteerism all over California and all over the county and all over the world, but I don't think it's highlighted any more than the volunteerism efforts that are right here in Round Valley. And this is just a prime example of this project. This was basically here a couple of years ago, pretty much an abandoned building that had a lot of problems, and as you can see what it is now. So I know, speaking for my colleagues, this board is really proud of the project that's been done here. And also, just a short note, I believe this is really a historical event. This is the first time, to my knowledge, in history of Mendocino County where the Board of Supervisors has come here. There's been committee meetings and such through the years, but this is the first time that the Board of Supervisors have officially met in Round Valley. So this is just, I'm really proud of this event today, and I appreciate your comments on any of these issues. We got some important agenda items that are relevant to this valley. And so thank you for showing up here this morning. I really personally appreciate it.
Thank you, Supervisor Pinches, and I as well, I'm sure along with the other board members, appreciate the turnout today and appreciate the fact that I got to come back to this beautiful valley. Haven't been to Covelo for about 3 years, and it was a fun drive, and as the sheriff said, I did it at a pretty fast clip. So anyway, other public expression, please come forward, state your name for the record, know that you have 3 minutes. Supervisor McCowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just would like to say that anyone who doubts the value of the board having off-site meetings should be here today. And I'd also like to say that we have probably about 5 times the attendance here that we normally do down in Ukiah. The only way we can get a crowd like this is to do something really unpopular. So thank you all.
Thank you. Public expression, please come forward, state your name.
Hi guys, my name's Robbie Wire. I've lived in Round Valley for 35 years, I suppose. I initially came here to manage this building when it was a restaurant. It's much more fun to be here now that this building has been turned into sort of the hub that we can really be proud of in this community, and such great multiple use. I'm here to say that I would like to be involved in the building amnesty program in a little bit greater capacity than just an individual who's trying to get a red tag building through the
Planning department.
Yes. So knowing a number of people in this room and what they're dealing with in that process, I would like to try and help and give some time of my own and try to bring a little common sense from, the homeowner to the process. So I'm hoping to work with you on some level, and I'll be talking to you individually about it. So that's what I had to bring up today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair, do we have his contact information?
Sir, we will need your contact information, and I imagine there's a orange form to fill out.
Yeah, I'll fill it out. I'm pretty easy to find.
Okay. Anyone else? Public expression? Please come forward.
My name's Chris Brennan. I'm a Laytonville resident. I'm here to talk about the National Forest. I spent a lot of time in that forest, have been for 40 years. The forest is out of control.
Chris?
The forestry, yeah?
We will take public
I thought you were
expression
doing
with
that
No, this is for items not on the
All right.
agenda. Okay, thank you very much. We'll hear from you in a moment. Anyone else for items not on the agenda? Seeing no one, we'll move forward to agenda item number 3, approval of the minutes. Board members?
Could we defer those one more time?
Both
June
sets of
15th.
minutes?
Just June
We have-
15th.
Okay, we also have the 27th.
Can we continue them?
Okay, we will continue approval of the minutes, and we're going to move forward to consent calendar. Clerk, has proper notice been established?
Yes, it has.
Thank you very much. Supervisors, do you have items to be pulled?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
There's been a motion by Supervisor Pinches to approve the consent calendar, a second by Supervisor Smith. Before we take the motion, I'd like to take public comment to any item that's on the consent calendar. Anyone that would like to comment, please come forward. Seeing no one, comes back to the board. All those in favor of the motion for approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none. Vote unanimous. We're moving on to agenda item number 5A. Ms. Angela?
Is it Melanie? Melanie, the Melanie Lighthouse.
Is that, are we past the time?
AD.
Do you want to go, or do you want to go to our first time item?
Madam Chair, at this time, we could go to our first timed item, and I could give the CEO report at a later time.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think the sheriff has something as well, or is that later on the agenda? 10:30. You want to do it at 10:30? Okay. Then we're going to move on to the 10:15 item, and it's presentation by the Friends of the Round Valley Public Library regarding Round Valley's new library and commons building. Ms. Lightbody, are you going to start? Oh, you have a gentleman here. And please introduce yourself as well.
Chair Brown, lady and gentlemen of the board, Mel Lightbody, County Librarian. It is my pleasure today to introduce you to Ed Tipas and the Friends of the Round Valley Library Commons. I think that I don't even need to tell you what they've done, because I think that you can just look around here today and see. And I've asked Ed just to come and speak a little bit to all y'all about all of the work that they've done. It's incredible, amazing. Ed?
Please state your name again for the record.
For the hard of hearing, I'm Ed Chipas, and I'm the president of the Friends, and I've spoken to this group many times, so you should recognize me. I certainly know who you are. I want to thank the board, especially John Pinches, for all the support you've given us, and to Mel Lightbody, our county librarian, also in this whole project. This is definitely a community project. A lot of people were involved, and the meetings, we used to have meetings where 2 or 3 people would come. I'd be there with a couple of other people, and I was vice president for years, and then I inherited the job because the previous president died and there's no one else. And so here we are in this beautiful building, and this is not even completed yet. Behind you, if you walked in the back, you'd see some kind of ugly looking rooms, and those will be converted into a kitchen. There's going to be a patio out behind me and outside there, a coffee shop, so it'll be a nice place. This building, as I recall, when I first came to Covelo back in 1981, they used to have a coffee shop where all the old guys, of which I am now one, would sit there and drink coffee and spend a couple of hours every morning. There's no place like that in Covelo now. Well, we do have the coffee shop out there, but it's kind of small, so this will be a great addition. I was swimming in the Eel River yesterday evening, and I saw a woman there. She had her 3 boys with her, and I asked her, I didn't know her at all, and I said, do you kids use the library? Do your kids use the library? She said, we're there every couple of days, we go there. And then she said, but you know, they're there because of the high-speed internet mostly. And I could tell in her voice that she was hoping that that attraction of the computer games gets people surrounded by all these books. Sooner or later, they're going to start reading, I think. So that's our hope. And this room here is part of the Commons, and this is also going to be used, is being used for a lot of meetings and events. We've had concerts here, music groups have come, and for fundraisers for the library as well as for personal parties. So I've been allotted 15 minutes, but I don't think I'm going to need that. Oh, Barbara Youngblood, a local resident here, once told somebody else that she, if you get a chance to look around right here on the wall, you can see this is all local artwork here. And this is not only a library and a commons, now we have an art gallery here, and people have come here just to see the art. And our librarian, Rachel Borum, tells me that the volunteers has increased. We've got about 20 volunteers. When we were in the old library over there, we had a hard time scraping up one or two. So people are supporting the library. The use of the library has gone up to about triple of what it was a year ago. And I think that about covers what I have to say, except that we need your continued support. This library will not be able to survive without the county's help. With all the fundraising we've done, we've kind of milked this community pretty dry. We've taken about as much money I think we can out of people. So were it not for the local support as well as the grants that we got, we wouldn't be here today. So I hope if you haven't got a chance to walk around and see the new library inside, it's really beautiful. I've heard 2 comments from different people that when we first opened, they came in here, people who know buildings, and they actually cried. They saw it. They were so overwhelmed by the beauty of the building. I think it's spectacular myself. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Do we have other presenters? Okay. Board members, and then we'll go to the public. Seeing no one wanting to speak on the board, public comment on this agenda item on the library, please come forward, state your name for the record, and know you have 3 minutes.
I'm Virginia Spivey and a longtime member of this community. I teach at the high school. I just want to say that the high-speed internet is also used by returning college students that have graduated from Round Valley High School. I'm thinking about one young woman in particular who is at UC Berkeley and is using the facility this summer to take an online class she needs. So it is not just about the games, although that's a big draw. But we do have young people here using the facility to further their education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else, please come forward. State your name.
My name is Diane Simmons, and I'm a member of the Friends of the Library. I would just, as we're talking about this facility, I would like to give deep appreciation to Willits Online and their owner, Mike Ireton. The time and the equipment that he has donated to make this high-speed system work, and he's continuing to do that. Without that, we wouldn't have had the funds. The county wasn't able to step into the level that was needed. We are soon to get Horizon to put us into the computerized system. Without their participation and their donations, this wouldn't be happening, and I really commend them and appreciate their very wholehearted support of this facility.
Thank you.
I'm John Glasgow from UVC TV, and I want to thank you all for inviting us over here. Had a fantastic time. I usually tell my staff, don't get up here and talk in front of the Board of Supervisors for anything, and I don't usually. But I have to say, coming into Covelo, I've only been here one other time. I came in not knowing what to expect. walked into this building, and all I can say is, great job. What a fantastic deal, what a great crowd we have here. And I too have to thank the internet people over there at Willits. They've contacted me, they allowed us to go over the internet. This is going live all over the world. And so that doesn't usually happen from a little community like this. It took the internet, it took all you volunteers, and I want to thank all of you and thank you, the Board of Supervisors, for making things like this happen in a small community like this.
Thank you very much.
Ed T-Boss again, but I can't pass the opportunity up. If you turn around, you'll see our librarian washing the windows right behind you.
That's wonderful. Anyone else? Seeing no one, it comes back to the board.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution, but if I'm allowed to, I'd like to read the resolution.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is a resolution of the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors commending the community leadership of the Friends of the Round Valley Public Library. Whereas the Friends of the Round Valley Public Library have had a vision for a building that would be a hub for Round Valley's communities, and whereas they have believed in the ability of the people of the valley to provide money, effort, and support to sustain this project, and whereas they have raised over $1 million to renovate the moribund Round Valley Inn to a new vibrant library and commons, and whereas they opened the first phase of the new Round Valley Library Commons in March of 2010. And whereas they are an inspiration for the entire county, and that a small dedicated group were capable of overcoming fiscal obstacles in order to enrich their community and a modern and aesthetic library. Now therefore be it resolved that the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors commend the Friends of the Round Valley Public Library for their outstanding vision and hard work in providing the communities of Round Valley with a new community center. The foregoing resolution, introduced by Supervisor John Pinches, second by Supervisor Smith, and carried this day of August 2010 by the following vote.
Okay, and it looks like a roll call vote. Clerk, will you please do the roll call?
Supervisor McCowan,
Yes.
Supervisor Pinches,
Yes.
Supervisor Smith,
Yes.
Supervisor Colfax.
Yes.
Supervisor Brown.
Yes.
Carries.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and we will have a framed copy for the library. Okay, sure. All right. We're going to, what is the time? Are we shy? A few, maybe 4:30, 4 or 5 minutes. Oh, okay.
Good on
I think my watch is off. David, you gotta keep me on time. You're the vice chair.
Go.
Okay, our next item is agenda item number 8B. It's presentation and update by the Mendocino National Forest regarding plans to deal with illegal marijuana on the National Forest. I am the sponsor, but I would like to move this forward and bring, oh, okay. We're gonna stop again. I am so sorry. I guess I was going so fast coming up here. I'm going through the agenda very fast. Sheriff Allman, we have a special ceremony today, and can you please present the item?
We do. Thank you, Madam Chair. And continuing with the day of first of the board being up here, the Sheriff's Office is very proud to do what I believe, at least in my career, the first time we've sworn in a new deputy that's going to be assigned here in Covelo. And it'll take less than 5 minutes, but it's more than a formality. It's a legal charge that we give to our new deputy sheriff. So if I could have Deputy Sheriff Hank Stoffley come up, please.
Sheriff, should we invite the other law enforcement to come up as well, if they could?
I'd love to. If there's other law enforcement officers that want to come up, by all means. Sheriff's Office is very, very sincere with our swearing in. We, of course, do the legal formality of swearing in the oath of office, followed by the Peace Officer Code of Ethics, which for the past 3.5 years, it's been a requirement. Every new peace officer recite the Peace Officer Code of Ethics to the public. And we take this very seriously, so we'll get on with the formalities, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Hank Stockley. Hank comes to us originally from Sonoma County, but he's worked for us for about 16 months on the coast. The good news, he's going to be a Round Valley resident deputy sheriff. The bad news for the coast, he's been an animal control officer for the coast for the last 16 months. So the coast has lost a very, very fine officer, and he's come to us ready to perform his duties full steam ahead here at Covelo. So, repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Hank Stockley,
Do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
I will support and defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance
and I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations. So Deputy Stockley has chosen a family friend to pin the badge on him, and injuries don't count, okay? He's not on workers' comp yet, so. You're right, you have to do it like this, right?
Getting here, it's been a long ride. Had to suffer through an awful lot of stuff. I was his high school ag teacher. And, probably need my glasses to see what I'm doing, but I'm getting there. But it's just an honor to be asked to do this. Come on now.
He retired.
Should have, years ago. This is embarrassing. There you go.
We like ag teachers in Covelo, so welcome. Glad you're here. The next is a Peace Officer Code of Ethics, and this is something that we at the Sheriff's Office take extremely seriously. And the State of California Peace Officer Standards and Training also takes this standard Code of Ethics extremely seriously and mandates it for all academy training. So, time, slow.
As a law enforcement officer, my fundamental duty is to serve mankind, to safeguard lives and property, protect the innocent against deception, the weak against oppression or intimidation, and the peaceful against violence or disorder, and to respect the constitutional rights for all persons to liberty, equality, and justice. I will keep my private life unsullied as an example to all, maintain courageous calm in the face of danger, scorn, or ridicule, develop self-restraint, and be constantly mindful of the welfare of others. Honest in thought and deed in both my personal and official life, I will be exemplary in obeying the laws of the land and the regulations of my department. Whatever I see or hear of a confidential nature, or that is confided to me in my official capacity, will be kept ever secret unless revelation is necessary in the performance of my duty. I will never act officiously or permit personal feelings, prejudices, animosities, or friendships to influence my decisions. With no compromise for crime and with relentless persecution of criminals, I will enforce the law courteously and appropriately without fear or favor, malice or ill will, never employing unnecessary force or violence, and never accepting gratuities. I recognize the badge of my office as a symbol of public faith and accept it as a public trust to be held so long as I am true to the ethics of the police service. I will constantly strive to achieve these objectives and ideals, dedicating myself before God and to my chosen profession, law enforcement.
So I present to you our newest deputy sheriff, and I present to you, to the Round Valley community, your newest resident deputy. We're extremely So, Madam Chair, I'll be joining the marijuana conversation shortly. I'm just going to step out for 10. But thank you very much
Okay.
for indulging us the time to do a first for you. Thank you.
And congratulations to you, and thank you. So we will carry on with agenda item 8B. It is the presentation and update by the Mendocino National Forest regarding plans to deal with illegal marijuana on the National Forest. On July 13th, 2010, Forest Supervisor Tom Carteris provided an informational presentation to the board. As a result, the board requested that Forest Service representatives attend the upcoming meeting here today to address the issue of illegal marijuana growing on the forest and national forests, and we had several areas of interest to receive a report on. With no further ado, we will go forward. Tom, are you? Thank you, sir. Restate your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Tom Contreras. I'm the Forest Supervisor of the Mendocino National Forest for the Pacific Southwest region of the USDA Forest Service. I want to thank you this morning for the opportunity to be a part of this historic event as far as the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors coming to the Covelo area, and look forward to any questions related to this matter on the Mendocino National Forest. I'd also like to recognize the individuals that I brought with me today to assist me in the presentation. I'd like to introduce our new Regional Special Agent in Charge, Scott Harris. Scott has been here now a couple of weeks, so he's getting introduced to California. He came from Chicago. I'd like to introduce Mike Gaston, the Assistant Regional Special Agent in Charge. I'd like to introduce Tamara Schmidt, who's a Public Affairs for the Mendocino National Forest. And lastly, I'd like to introduce the District Ranger, your District Ranger here for the Covelo Ranger District for the Mendocino National Forest, and he's also the District Ranger for the Upper Lake Ranger District. I'd like to refer to your letter, Madam Chairman, of the questions that you have related to marijuana activity on the Mendocino National Forest. And I'm going to actually probably break this up in a couple of parts. I'd like the Regional Special Agent and Agent to assist me in some of the questions that are here. But first, I'd like maybe for Scott Harris to introduce himself and remarks that he may have related to his position here as the Regional Special Agent in Charge for California. Scott.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you. Again, my name is Scott Harris. I am the Special Agent in Charge of the Pacific Southwest region out of Vallejo, California. I appreciate the opportunity that Tom Contreras has offered me and my Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Mike Gaston, to come and address you today regarding some of the issues that are affecting us on the National Forest. As Tom mentioned, I am new to the region. This is my third week, so I'm still getting used to the environment, a little bit different from the Chicago area, but I'm very familiar with kind of the issues that have faced Region 5 or the Pacific Southwest region, the issues that are currently facing and the issues that we'll face in the future. So I thought what I would do is just go over kind of what our commitment, what our partnerships are, and our strategy initially to address the issue of marijuana cultivation in the National Forest. First of all, the Forest Service is committed to ensuring that the forest is a safe place for our families, our communities, everyone to visit, because there's millions of visitors each year that go to the National Forest. We realize that it needs to be a safe place, and that's our charge, is to keep those forests safe. And we're committed to doing that. We recognize, however, that as a single entity, we are rather small, and we can't do it by ourselves. And we've found great success in partnering with different state, local, and other federal agencies to pool our resources together to make a larger impact in the forest, and in particular with the eradication efforts of the marijuana that's grown in the forest. Obviously, I believe over the last 3 years, this region has actually increased our staff substantially. We pretty much have doubled the law enforcement officers that we have had in the region, and also our special agents that do the investigations. And so there are a lot of resources that we're trying to build up and put our resources where the issues are at. There's a huge, this isn't news to anyone here, I understand that, huge issue with marijuana throughout, not only here in Mendocino, but throughout California and all of the national forests, and in fact nationwide. But we're trying to put those resources to make a bigger bang for our buck in the areas that can most use them. We have, as I mentioned earlier, the partnerships really are kind of the focal point of this strategy. We partner with all of the 5 counties that make up the Mendocino National Forest. Very good working relationships with Sheriff Allman and with the other sheriffs in the different counties. We have very good working relationships and partnerships with different state entities, to include the Highway Patrol as well as the Department of Fish and Game. And they are very important partners in this effort to try to eradicate and prevent the cultivation of marijuana in the national forest. Obviously, we partner with several other federal agencies, to include the Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, Fish and Wildlife, ICE, and DEA. And those are strategic partnerships that, again, as we work together, I believe we're having a greater impact, and we can make a greater impact in the deterrent effect of certain individuals growing on the national forest. One thing that we are doing as well is we are actually putting our Forest Service special agents on the different task force that DEA has, as well as some of the HIDA organizations. And I think we've seen increased relationship building and increased prosecutions as well as investigations as we are actually putting our people with those different organizations. ASAC, Mike Gaston, is over kind of our drug unit, and so after I finish my remarks, I'd like Mike to come up and he can fill you in a little bit more as to the different statistics and some of the operations that we have had where we have seen success in the eradication efforts. Obviously, the eradication of marijuana is part of the strategy, but it's not the only strategy. If that was the only strategy, we should have been successful by now, but there's still gardens out there, cultivation going on, and we recognize that, and even with our increased efforts, there has been more widespread use of the forest for marijuana cultivation. And so, although eradication is an important part, equally important is the investigation side of the house. And it's through these investigations, it's our belief, that we will have a greater impact to deter these different drug trafficking organizations to grow within the national forest. If we're only dealing with kind of the worker bees and never getting up to the queen bee, there's plenty of worker bees to fill the ones that we take out. But as we're able to work up that food chain, we believe to the decision makers that will have the impact that we truly need to have a greater deterrent effect, as well as preventing these different organizations from growing within the national forest. We want to make it so, we want to increase the risk to them of growing on the national forest that they choose not to do that. And that's our goal, that's our strategy to make that happen. So eradication is part of that, investigation and aggressive prosecution is part of that. Obviously, we work closely with our state and local counterparts on the prosecution side of the house as well as the federal side, and we'll continue to develop those relationships so we can go after these organizations and individuals aggressively. And then finally, and something I believe that Tom Contreras, our forest supervisor, may address a little bit later, another part of the strategy is the reclamation of these different cultivation sites. And not to steal his thunder, I'll let Tom address that a little bit later. So again, thank you for having us. I look forward to working closely, not only with Sheriff Allman and the deputies here in Covelo and the surrounding areas, but with the board and the community, because it will take all of our efforts to get to where we want to go. And with that, I'll turn the time over to ASAC Mike Gaston.
Thank you. My name is Michael Gaston. I am in charge of about 18 drug agents throughout the whole state. I've been here a little over 2.5 years, and I have seen what the marijuana problem is here on the force. It's phenomenal. I agree with you, and I understand your frustrations. However, I do believe we are making some progress. Now, I want to kind of explain what I'm talking about and kind of give you some numbers. I won't bore you with a lot. When I first got here, we had an operation called Operation Locust. It was down in Tulare County. It was a huge success. Made several arrests, eradicated a lot of plants, put a lot of people in jail. We did no reclamation. We did not remove any of the infrastructure off of the National Forest. The next year, we had Operation SOS. We kind of saw from Operation Locust that we were missing something, that we did not deter them from coming back. So when we had Operation SOS, it's called Save Our Sierras, it was in Fresno County. Huge success again, well over 500,000 plants, put I think 80 people in jail. But more than that, we did 100% reclamation off of every garden that we eradicated, or every marijuana site that we eradicated. It was hard to measure the success, but then again this year we had Operation Trident, which was in Tulare County, Fresno County, and Madera County. The numbers actually were down in Fresno County, considerably down. For those 3 counties, the total approximately for the numbers that we have eradicated were about 450,000. Wound up with 36 people in jail. But the important thing was, we believe by doing the 100% reclamation and removing the infrastructure, all the trash, the hose, everything out of the sites that had been used the year before, we believe that pushed them somewhere else, made them go away. I don't think they're going to quit completely, but they were not in Fresno County to the extent they were the year before. So anyway, I just felt that was important to let y'all know that we understand that. Part of our big push, along with the investigations, is going to be reclamation. I'm going to let Tom Contreras talk about the reclamation part of it. We are actually out there trying to help with the reclamation. But just to kind of give you some numbers, and I did pull up some numbers for Mendocino County. So far this year, and these are just the numbers that have been reported so far, we have a little over 1 million plants that have been eradicated in California. In Mendocino, on the Mendocino National Forest, about 440,000 plants, 75 sites, 36 felony arrests, and we've seized 25 firearms. So I do recognize that there is a major problem here on the Mendocino. We have 3 agents here now, 7 law enforcement people, so uniformed. So we recognize that we have some large operations that are coming up. I'm not going to get into when they are or whatever, but this year we have several planned. We're going to be working with Mendocino County. We are going to try to make a difference here in Mendocino County. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to address the question that you had concerning cleanup and restoration and rehab on the Mendocino National Forest, and what are we currently doing. When I presented a couple of weeks or several weeks ago to the board, I gave you some figures. This year, the Mendocino National Forest received $250,000 as a result of Senator Feinstein presenting a bill and having dollars brought to the state of California in marijuana cleanup, rehabilitation, and rehab to the other 17 national forests. Again, specifically, the Mendocino received about $250,000. I have been part of a paper that was written for Senator Feinstein. It's called a white paper that helped develop a foundation of how the cleanup efforts could be approached. And that approach being, and we are using that approach here on the Mendocino National Forest, is when we have an eradication that has taken place, and again, using this $250,000, we have an individual on the Mendocino National Forest that is a resource specialist. They have a resource background. They are leading the effort at when eradication is completed and law enforcement has done what I consider to be making the site safe. Then we bring in a specialist or specialists. It depends on what the matter may be related to resource damage that was caused by a garden. They will come in and evaluate that location to see what kind of efforts need to be done related to either picking up waste, black plastic pipe, diversion of water, rehabbing the area back to its natural conditions. They will evaluate that site, put a cost figure together for that site, and then we will use whatever resources available to us. Those resources may be contractors. Those resources may be, and we've used these here recently, hotshot crews, which are firefighting crews that we've used both here on this side of the National Forest of the Mendocino and the other side. We break it down into the east side and the west side. And we have used the California Conservation Corps. So there are many opportunities that we have engaged in folks helping us as far as these cleanup efforts. And I want to recognize the Willits Environmental Center, which is the first volunteer effort that we've used here on the Mendocino National Forest to help with that effort too. And they are learning about the process and have actually done a cleanup effort on 3 gardens here on this side of the Mendocino National Forest. So we, again, evaluate these sites. Folks go in and do the efforts as far as either the cleanup work, which is different than restoration and rehab work. Cleanup means essentially cleaning up garbage, black plastic pipe, those things that need to be removed to what was essentially said earlier, break the infrastructure for those drug trafficking organizations that are out on the forest. When they have no infrastructure, then it's pretty tough to go back. It takes a long time to build that infrastructure back up. So essentially we want to break the back of that infrastructure. Then we want to rehabilitate those areas that have been damaged by the human activity that is not sanctioned on the National Forest. It is a learning experience for all of us because this is the first time that California, the Forest Service, has done this to this scale in this kind of organized fashion in a process of doing cleanup work on national forests. As I think Special Agent Gaston had said that, again, we didn't recognize at the very beginning when we were doing these eradication efforts. Yes, we were cleaning up as best as we could, but remember we have very limited resources, and those law enforcement officers were literally running as far as doing the eradication efforts, doing a little bit of cleanup and moving on to the next garden, and the next garden, and the next garden. A lot of things were left behind as a result of, again, this resource damage, which that we recognized over time and said, look, we need to go back now and start cleaning up these areas. So that's the effort that's taking place on the Mendocino. It's one of many efforts here in California as far as the other 17 national forests. As I said, it's a learning experience for all of us as far as our resource specialists that are working on this effort, as well as our law enforcement folks of coordinating these efforts to take care of each one of these gardens. We have a target this year of trying to clean up 16 gardens. To date, we've done 15 gardens. And again, I want to recognize the Willits Environmental Center. They've done 3 of those 15 gardens that we've done so far. So really, we have one more on the books that we promised ourselves that we're going to do, but from what I can see, we're probably going to do more than that. So I consider it to be a success of that $250,000 that we have used to date and the effort of cleaning up 16 gardens to kind of measure how much and what it costs and how much activity it takes as far as using these specialists and volunteers as well as contractors and forest workforce to be able to clean these gardens. It depends on the size, depends on the quantity of what gets left behind, and even more importantly, if there are hazardous materials left behind, we have to get special contractors outside of what we have, either their forest resources. We have to have folks come in that have special equipment, special containers and those things to remove those hazardous materials that we will not expose volunteers or our forest employees to. So that's the effort that's taking place as it relates to cleanup on the Mendocino National Forest. So I would like to make one other comment, please, and I'd like to see if Sheriff Allman has anything as far as, and I want to make a comment back to the sheriff as well as the other sheriff departments that we've enjoyed what I consider to be on the Mendocino National Forest. Very supportive, very collaborative efforts in working together to eradicate cultivation on the Mendocino National Forest as well as our adjoining forests that are here in California. And Sheriff, I'd like to invite you to see if you had any comments related to what we've done as far as this collaborative effort in your county.
This has been a year that we're learning from last year and the year before, where we don't try to break the records of eradicating marijuana plants. That's not our goal. Our goal is to get as many marijuana plants as we can off public lands. And it's telling us that we're breaking all records because we're focusing on the large gardens. We're focusing on the people who are brought here. And I want to talk about the people real quickly who are leaving the trash in our public lands. These are not people who are sitting in this room right now, I assure you. And they're not people who at all pay property taxes in Mendocino County. These are people who come here, they're dropped off, they're left at the marijuana garden all summer. They have people who bring them food once a month or so. And when at the end of the marijuana season, they bring out the finished product of marijuana, and all of their infrastructure, their human waste, their garbage waste, everything has left there. And when he was thanking the Willits Environmental Center, I'll be very direct and say David Drell and Ellen Drell have both been very instrumental in working with Mike Thompson's office and Senator Boxer's office and Senator Feinstein's office of getting the finances coming in to help us clean this up. Some of this is in wilderness area, which means we can't take motorized vehicles in to clean up the land. There's a lot of logistical problems with this. However, this is the first year that every person has come to the table not saying this is what we're going to do, but by asking the question, what can we all do together to make it work? And so we have the Forest Service, we have BLM, and yes, there is BLM property east of Covelo, not a lot, but there is some BLM property here, and BLM is very helpful in getting us some resources to do it. I met with Senator Boxer's office yesterday, and her field assistant, Jennifer Tang, assured me that next year more resources will be here so we can have a concerted effort. One of the things that, if this financial situation has taught us, it's no one government agency should or could be able to take care of any one problem. It's a regionalization effort. And so working with the Forest Service, working with every possible resource that wants to help us here, we're making a difference. And with that, we're seeing a huge increase of illegal aliens, which are being arrested, firearms. Last year in Mendocino County alone, 169 firearms were found at marijuana gardens. And that's unprecedented. No other county in a state could make a statement like that. They don't even come half close. It's ridiculous the amount of firearms that we're seeing. We're seeing wildlife, which is just devastated. We're seeing land erosion from people using gardening techniques, which nobody would approve of. And we're seeing poisons brought in from Mexico that we can't even read the labels to. The only thing we can see is the cross and skull bones of people bringing in pesticides. So we're being faced with a detail that we've never been faced with before. I mean, there's some new challenges every day, but fortunately, nobody, and I'm talking federal agencies, state agencies, and local agencies, nobody is saying this is my problem or this is your problem. We're all saying this is our problem. So the bottom line is resources. How can we get more money from the federal government and state government and coming into Covelo so we can have these fifth generation people who have been coming hunting in Mendocino County for years and years, but now they've said they're not going to come here anymore. We all know there was a devastating shooting last week in Covelo, east of here, involving law enforcement. Well, that's not something that we're hoping will ever happen again, but the chances are that it will. So working with the CEO's office, working with county council, working with everybody involved that wants to get involved with the marijuana is letting us take a big piece of the pie. Now, what he alluded to about not telling you what our plans are for this year and next year, it's very important. The only thing I'm going to say is we're planning a very big event for next year. And I'm going to tell you that next year at this time, Covelo is going to be seriously impacted with law enforcement of doing every bit of eradication we can. Because it's time that the gauntlet's been thrown down and we're going to go after it. So I'm not going to use the words, trust me, we're taking care of it. But I'm saying that if you or if any member of the board wants to really and truly see where we're going on a map of hitting these gardens and so forth, I'd be happy to sit down and show you where we're going. But I'm very proud of the efforts that all the agencies are working together on so we can have a bottom, at the end of the year, bottom line, this is what we did and how are we going to improve it for next year. But the remediation Sheriff Margaret Mims from Fresno County and I met in March, and Sheriff Mims, she led the Save Our Sierras, Operation SOS. In Operation SOS, the Fresno County Sheriff's Office reclaimed over 50 miles of plastic pipe that was put into recycling. This is 50 miles of plastic pipe from their public land, Sierra, that they had volunteers take out and transport to the recycling center. We're going to duplicate that next year. We're going to remove infrastructure, and we're going to hopefully work with the Forest Service, as Supervisor Pinches wants us to do, and get some gates unlocked so there will be more ability for the public to go in, more ability for law enforcement to go in and attack this. And that's, I can't think of any other word for this other than attack.
And Sheriff, I'd like to say it's just not Supervisor Pinches, it's also Supervisor Brown, because the First District has National Forest.
I apologize for that, Chair, Madam Chair, and you're right. And we're focusing on Cow Mountain in your district also. So there's a lot of areas that we're focusing on, but public lands has to be where we're going to reclaim.
Thank you. I'd like to give the opportunity to Round Valley Tribal Police if they would like to give comment. Please come forward. State your name for the record.
Sure. Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Carlos Rubano. Have about 10 years law enforcement experience in Indian country. Prior to coming here to Covelo, I've been here for about 2 years now. I've worked for the Coyote Valley tribe, so there's a big difference. A lot of marijuana. On our end of the spectrum on marijuana, we have a lot of issues concerning tribal heirs and property. Whenever the season comes around, we get a lot of bickering over property, heirs squatting without the approval of the other heirs. As far as eradication, there's only me and another officer in the valley, and a lot of our time is focused on community policing. We attempted last year, or beginning of this year, to go up and escort one of our EPA departments to check out a grow that basically was an old grow. We're running into a lot of piping, sleeping bags, camping areas. Again, it seems to be Hispanics, and so it's pretty dangerous on our end as well, with only just Will and I working. We look forward to a good working relationship with the Sheriff's Department, and hopefully we can seek their assistance in eradicating as well. We do have an ordinance. Our tribe has enacted an ordinance of 33 plants, and we've received an opinion from the BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, stating basically it's against the law to grow on federal lands. So I've taken our department out of the registration of these plants and gardens. The council has to do that until we get until the tribe figure out what they want to do. Do they want to continue growing? To that end, I don't know. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much, sir.
Sure.
Next, I do have a letter I received late last night from our U.S. Representative, Mike Thompson. I will read it into the record, but I would like to give the opportunity of the Willits Environmental Center to speak at this point.
Thank you, Chairman Brown. My name's Ellen Drell, and although I didn't come necessarily prepared to speak, I appreciate this opportunity. And I want to thank Sheriff Allman and Supervisor Contreras for acknowledging the work the Environmental Center has done on this issue. We've been been involved for about 1.5 years now, and it's difficult and complex and frustrating and all those things, but I appreciate certainly it's encouraging that so many entities are coming together with a common focus. I want to mention 2 things that haven't been mentioned yet that we think are very important. Let's see. I can remember the one. Oh, I want to let you know that the Environmental Center is it's really focusing our attention in a particular area of Mendocino National Forest, because of course our concern is that the public's resources, the forest itself, the fisheries, the wildlife, the land itself is protected, and we've worked for over 20 years to do that and have spent a lot of that 20 years in this area northeast of Covelo. So we know the resources well, and we understand how vulnerable they are to illegal water diversion and to pollution. And in particular, the Middle Fork of the Eel has an incredible fishery that is on the brink of collapse, and it won't take much to push it over the edge. A lot of the marijuana growing is happening in this, well, it's happening all over the forest, but of particular interest to us is to see the marijuana growing, the diversion, the pollution, and the cleanup happen in this particular area of the Middle Fork of the Eel. So that is very important to us, and I believe we have the agreement with some Forest Service and the Sheriff's Department as well. So that's of high priority to us, and I think it is to all the people who use the National Forest for recreation as well. The other issue that I want to bring up that hasn't been mentioned yet is the importance of interdiction. As a volunteer cleaning up trash, I can tell you it is extremely discouraging to be out there working hard, and it is hard work. It's not necessarily high-tech work, but it's hard physical work. It's very discouraging to be doing it knowing that more trash is being driven up the road even as you do it. So we think it's extremely important that the Forest Service and all of us look very carefully at places to do effective interdiction. It's not always possible to cut off access to the Forest Service easily, because in some places there are many places where not only public roads but private roads enter the forest. But in some places, growers really do have to go through a bottleneck. They have to go through a gauntlet, and it's possible, we believe, to put a checkpoint on some roads, and with a minimum of resources, a minimum meaning maybe, well, relatively speaking, but perhaps with maybe hiring 2 people to man a checkpoint 24 hours a day at strategic times of the year, you can prevent a lot of damage from being done. And so we really encourage looking at that possibility very closely and carefully, because we think it could be extremely effective. So that's an issue that I hope we will be discussing not only with Supervisor Contreras but also with Mike Gaston in the near future. So again, Carrie, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. And I also was very educated, long conversation I had with David at the Willits Environmental Center, bringing me up to date and all that's gone on that the center has done, as well as discussing with me the different conditions that you're finding with the hiking trails and the wilderness area. So I really appreciated that. I would like to read this letter from Congressman Mike Thompson. Dear Chair Brown and Mendocino County Supervisors, thank you for taking up the important issue of illegal grows on public lands. Scheduling conflicts don't allow me to be at the meeting, but I wanted to let you know what I'm doing in Washington. It's more than time to take our forests back. The illegal activities and associated violent behavior are a danger to law-abiding people who want to enjoy our beautiful national forests. Equally troubling is the use of toxic chemicals and fertilizers which pollute some of our most important watersheds. The outrageous diversion of streams is contributing to even more environmental devastation. I helped secure an additional $15 million in the last appropriations bill to combat and clean up illegal marijuana grows on public lands. $10 million of that is going towards assisting law enforcement with efforts to stem cartels responsible for many illegal grows. A third of the appropriations is being made available for the cleanup and restoration of public lands damaged by illegal grows. Mendocino National Forest received $250,000 and will only begin to address the damage in our local forests. As you know, I've been a major supporter of grant assistance for law enforcement in Mendocino County. I'm proud to have supported the Sheriff's Office recent award of a community-oriented policing grant that made possible the hiring of the new deputy you are swearing in today. As I continue to push programs on the legislative front, I am constantly aware of the toll taken by our environment and our communities. I look forward to working together with you, Sheriff Allman, and our constituents. Sincerely, Mike Thompson. So that's for the record. Yes, Mr. Brown, reintroduce, well, I introduced you, but do it yourself as well.
Christopher Brown, Air Pollution Control Officer for Mendocino County. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say, Tom came and met with us several weeks ago with the resources agencies. We talked about some of these issues. And, listening today, I think there's some other opportunities here for some coordination between the agencies. I'm going to be talking to Carmel and Tom and the other Tom about that. And I wanted to shake Ellen's hand for her hard work. I know what that's like. I've been there and done it. There are serious environmental consequences. Some of the board members have seen photographs of activities we've been out on. And it's not just environmental damage, but it's also fire. These folks are out there with campfires this time of year. We've got a lot of grass out there in the forest. There's a huge possibility of escape fires. We already had some fatalities in this county several years ago related to a fire, related to a drug operation. It was not on federal land, but these can be very serious consequences that occur. So I just want to draw the attention to that, and we look forward to working closer with Forest Service and Sheriff Allman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for your input. I'd like to go to public comment at this time. Chris Brennan, please come forward. Restate your name for the record. You know you have 3 minutes.
My name's Chris Brennan. I'm from Laytonville. I'm a private citizen. I've spent 40 years in this forest, and this forest, it's not a marijuana problem, it's an occupation. The forest department does not control the forest anymore. It's controlled by foreign national drug cartels. I'm out there in the winter, I'm out there all year, also BLM. I come across illegal aliens, I've been shot at. The damage they are doing is the worst environmental damage I've seen in my lifetime in Mendocino County. This is a disaster, what's going on out there. They're wiping out our deer, they're poisoning the bears, they're poisoning everything. And if we don't get a handle of it soon, like starting tomorrow, we're not going to have a forest. We might as well change the name to Cartel National Forest. We need to declare a state of emergency like you do with a forest fire. I'm hoping the board will declare a state of emergency, go to the governor, declare a state of emergency, and get the resources. Maybe it's the National Guard we need. I think it's too big to be handled. Our sheriff's department can't handle it. They got their hands full on private land. It's obvious the forestry can't handle it. They're everywhere out there. They are destroying this forest. It's also the BLM land around Laytonville is all occupied too now by foreign nationals. And I'm requesting the board look at maybe declaring a state of emergency, and maybe that will help get some more resources, like if it was a forest fire. I know a couple years ago during the lightning fires that they actually stopped fighting fires because armed cartel growers with guns went up to the forest fighters and the firefighters and scared them off. And then it cost millions of dollars more to put these fires out because they just got bigger. So this is costing tons of money by not dealing with it. Please declare a state of emergency and bring the National Guard in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Paul Truett, District 3 Fish and Game, County Fish and Game Commission, I believe, correct?
Good morning, I guess. What time is it? 11 o'clock. My name is Paul Truett. I was appointed by John Pinches to the District 3, which is the Covelo District, as the Fish and Game Commissioner. And I want to read a formal letter from our chairperson that was drafted a couple days ago. Dear Mr. Contreras, Mendocino County Fish and Game Commission has received a steady series of disturbing reports for several years concerning the rapidly increasing problems related to the large-scale marijuana cultivation on state and federal public lands. The problems reported are use of very large amounts of harmful herbicides, pesticides and fertilizers, diversion of stream flows, poaching of deer and other wildlife. Dead and sick birds and animals end up to and including bears have been reported to us as a result of contact with these harmful chemicals. Of even greater concern are the reports of personal dangers to hunters, fishermen, members of the public attempting to legally use the forest for recreation. The recent confrontation and shooting of an armed suspect in a grow operation underscores the seriousness and urgency of this problem. We understand that the problem is so bad that crews carrying out normal maintenance and trail building now require law enforcement to carry out their work. We feel that the situation has reached the level of a state of emergency, and we urge you to make such a formal declaration. The declaration of a state of emergency will help bring about a focused effort by law enforcement and responsible agencies to plan and implement a strategy to rid out public lands of these problems. While the issue of marijuana continues to be discussed and reviewed in Mendocino County, there is no debate on the issues that these large-scale harmful operations on public lands need to be eliminated. We have contacted Congressman Thompson on this issue, and we urge you to contact local and state and federal authorities to develop an emergency program to begin dealing with these problems. Sincerely, Craig Bell, Chair, Mendocino County Fish and Game Commission. I'd also like to go on record as thanking Sheriff Tom Allman and his efforts in the National Forest. I'm out in the forest quite regularly. I was out all weekend counting deer for the Blacktail Association and the Department of Fish and Game in Sacramento. And I can tell you this, if it wasn't for the efforts of our local sheriff's department right now, nothing would be being done right now. I was out in the forest for 3 days this last weekend and watched consistently at 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the mornings carloads of Hispanic cartel type vehicles flooding the roadways early in the AM periods of time with no federal law enforcement to be found. I've been up in this county, in this Covelo district for over 35 years. And this is, as Sheriff Allman said, it's unprecedented. There is no equality with anything that's ever happened before in this county. The magnitude of it is far beyond his control and his ability to deal with. And I'm urging the federal government today by a formal declaration that we expect them to file and declare a state of emergency in this national forest land because it's out of control completely. And we expect that to be done, and that is our urgent message to the Board of Supervisors today. There is no time to waste. We feel that every year, consistently, it gets bigger and bigger with unfettered access. So that's our urge from the Mendocino County Fish and Game Commission. Thank you very much for having us today. We appreciate being here. It's good to see all the agencies represented here, and we hope that we're going to be really getting a handle on it. Thank you, Tom, for talking about next year. We look forward to something better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Truett. Next speaker, Matt Finnegan, please come forward. No, you have 3 minutes. Restate your name for the record.
Thank you. My name's Matt Finnegan. I'm a resident of Mendocino County. I've been an avid user of the National Forest and particularly BLM lands probably the last 25 years. I do a lot of dirt bike riding, backpacking, fishing. I can't agree more with Mr. Brennan and Mr. Truett. The National Forest has been taken over. And it's not just the National Forest, it's also the BLM properties, because even if we're completely successful in the Mendocino National Forest, there's 25,000 acres over at Cow Mountain, there's Red Mountain and other BLM holdings up out of Laytonville that they're completely out of control and will get worse. I think it's imperative that the Board of Supervisors makes a declaration of an emergency to try to help get a task force and an Operation Locust and an Operation whatever we can get. The amount of people that go in and out of the forest with, you can tell. I mean, it's a loaded car with people and supplies. You'll see pickup trucks with potting soil going in and out. or going in, going out empty. So there needs to be a prevention aspect, and there needs to be a very, very controlled patrol. And I think the idea that from the lady from the Willits Environmental Center, having a checkpoint or multiple checkpoints where people are actually observed coming in and out, it doesn't take a lot of time to figure out what people are doing. People who have, camping gear and their family with them are going to recreate in the forest. People that have, 6,000 feet of black pipe, they don't get stopped. They go right in. So I urge the Board of Supervisors to declare a state of emergency and get as much help to this county as you can, because I talk to people that have used the forest for a long time and they don't go anymore because they're scared. And that includes people that are, judges, people in law enforcement, people that are hunters. These aren't people that are easily intimidated, but they have decided it's unsafe for them to use their own public land. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peter Bauer, please come forward. Restate your name for the record, please.
I'm Peter Bauer. I'm a fifth-generation cattle rancher here in Covelo. I'm also a grazing permittee out on the National Forest, which means we have a permit to graze livestock in the National Forest land. And in the last 10 years, we've seen grows get busted in country that we don't have cows in, and I've watched the marijuana move in to the country where I have cows. Last year, I rode into a 20,000 plant grow, and that was not there the year before, but it was on a nice south face and plenty of water. So I agree with what Paul says. I agree with what Chris says. I never thought about National Guard, but it's a good idea. So, and we've been shot at. Just the other day, we were tracking some cattle that were up in some country, and we got closer and closer and closer to where I believe there's still marijuana, even though it was removed last year. And it got to the point where we just decided that we were going to turn around. And there's pieces of country that I don't go into now because I know they're growing in there. I've seen their pickups in the springtime. I know they're back. And I guess it's just a matter of, putting a face to a name. This is someone whose livelihood is impacted by this. I'm a tax-paying citizen in Mendocino County, and my livelihood is threatened by this. So it's not just recreation. It's you're like people making a living too. So thank you for everything that you've done. And if what I hear, what you guys talk about actually happens, I can't wait to see it. But the sooner the better. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Please come forward, sir, and state your name for the record.
Rudy Knoop. I'm 25 years as a wood flooring contractor in this county, and now I live here semi-retired. And I would just like to ask a question, which, if the answer is no, it would be a suggestion. I understand that there's been 5 young men killed, similar to the one that we had last week here, because they were so stupid and ignorant that they didn't know that if you point a gun at an officer, you're going to get shot and killed probably. And I think it would be appropriate with this emergency action that's being considered to do a public education campaign in Spanish as well as in English, possibly at Mexican grocery stores, possibly where there's already a bunch of trash, dropping some leaflets. You say, hey, here's the deal. If you point a gun at an officer, you're going to get killed. Don't do that. And just to educate these people, because I'm 62 years old, and these guys look like kids to me. They're in their 20s, some of them are teenagers. And they at least deserve a chance to not be shot, or to learn how to not get shot in this situation.
Thank you for your comment, and I will have a response, but after the public comment period. Anyone else that would like to address this issue, please come forward. State your name for the record.
I'm again Virginia Spivey. I live in the National Forest and have since 1978.
I live right up off Forest Highway 7, 4 miles up the dirt road. My husband just retired from the Forest Service and I work at the high school. The idea of having someone observe people coming in makes a whole lot of sense because there's only a few roads in, and anyone that lives on those roads can tell you who's doing what when. It doesn't really take a lot of effort. The other thing is, this is not a new problem. In 2005, when I was taking my daughter over the hill, and I've lived in the forest, you understand, for all these years, I'm taking her over the hill to Chico State. We're coming back. I want to use a Forest Service bathroom rather than the side of the road. I see a tree over the path where the truck would go in, but I thought, oh well, we'll just walk over it. And then I see trucks back behind the bathrooms. And I go, Monique, let's go somewhere else. And I went and reported it to my local Forest Service station because I thought it was significant. There was no follow through, no papers I had to file. This has been going on for years. This didn't just suddenly bloom this year. And common sense would really take care of a lot of this. And yes, these young men that are in the forest are brought here by the people who are really in charge, and I take it the Forest Service is aware of that, and that's what they're working to try to change. So on the other hand, we do have young people who are being used by those who are making the big profits that simply send in a whole group the next year. So please, this is a state of emergency and has been for years. And as someone that lives in the forest, I can no longer do the things that I have done for years there because I'm afraid.
Thank you. Anyone else, public comment, please come forward. State your name for the record, sir.
Hi, my name's Tom Oxner, and my wife and I are owned by the Black Butte store. We have been 5 years in this community, and coming from the outside, this was all new to me. We are a tourism entity here next to Mendocino National Forest, and I'm frustrated. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge those efforts that are being made by everybody, both volunteer and government agencies. I recognize it's a big problem. And I would like to develop more use of the National Forest. From my standpoint, as a business person, I have intentionally not gone after equestrian business. In other words, people who come in and bring the horses to ride in the forest, because I just don't feel good. I can't tell people come here and then go out on the trail and enjoy the forest, except watch out for, 3 miles back we got this grow, and over here we have this grow, and it's just absurd. It is absurd that I grew up in California. I've been an outdoors person all my life. I've hunted, I've fished. It's crazy that we're standing here having this discussion right now. It's an armed, foreign invasion of public property. I understand the problem is bigger than the resource, and I think one thing I want to reiterate is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I'm in agreement with everybody. In the springtime, when all this stuff's coming down the road, get out there, patrol the roads 3, 4, 5 in the morning. They're going to be there. They have to. Everything has to come in that way. Wow, I just lost my train of thought. But so anyway, I'm reiterating. Yeah, we just need more resources put towards this, and I'd like to see people enjoy the national forest without concern for their safety. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Please come forward.
My name's Corey Miller. I have lived out there for 25 years. I live 5 miles from where the shooting just took place. Everybody's trying to do a good job, but we already lost the war. It's really bad out there. Things need to change, like policies, I think, with the Forest Service. where gates want to be opened. If we close the gates in springtime so people don't have access till July, they couldn't plant the plants. We have tried to get the gates closed. The policy is to allow the public back there. We need a state of emergency to change the policies so that at least through the grow season there isn't access out there. Another thing is the illegal water diversions. Those are a huge part of the resource damage. And really the environmental damage takes place in springtime. Once after July, it's a law enforcement issue. But people who live here in the spring, it's like we see it all go on. Something can be done to change the access to the forest and get funding for anybody, National Guard, anybody out there to stop it, because I think it's already too late. I think it's all way behind the curve. In the last 10 years, the grows are enormous. I walk every week out there. I find grows all the time. We turn them in. There's just not enough. There's 2 guys here to do the whole thing. The Forest Service needs more money. Thompson's money to get at least 3 or 4 people. I've been on all the pop patch pickup cleanups out there. Before we're allowed to go out there, it has to be cleared by law enforcement. There's 2 guys for 500,000 acres. They need more guys out there so that we can get out there and pick them up right after it takes place. And as soon as it gets into July or August, we're all done. We don't want to go out there. So it's a timing issue a lot out there. And I think closing gates would really help a lot by not allowing the access in July, and I think moving in that direction. There's gates throughout the forest, and I think they leave them open a lot for private property. I own private property. I think we could all agree to allow those gates to be closed, to have access through the gate at least for that period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Paula Fugman, and it's very brief. I love horseback riding, and I love hiking, and recently just tried to backpack in the Yolabolis. I stopped riding my horse along with many people here who were in riding club because we kept coming across groves, people with with rifles and black plastic pipe in the national forest. So one of the things I really love about living here, aside from being a teacher, a retired teacher, and loving this community, is that nature is so beautifully abundant and renewing for us. But it isn't anymore. It's really scary. So I think perhaps a state of emergency in some way is a really thoughtful strategy for gathering forces and money and volunteers to address what's out of control. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sir, please come forward very quickly.
Very briefly, I'm Noel Manners. I live just out of the valley here, and I don't spend that much time in the National Forest, but I've heard these stories for many years. One thing I wanted to address is that the National Forest isn't Covelo, and I hear a lot of talk about Covelo, and that next year there's going to be a big presence in Covelo. And so I just wanted to make a distinction that the National Forest is not Covelo. The shooting that happened last week was, as far as driving there, was probably the same distance as Willits is from Covelo. So, I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you. Seeing no one else come forward, sir, please.
Hello, my name is Randall Britton. I'm a private citizen, but I also manage and caretake a rather large tract of land adjacent to the National Forest. What I've noticed within the last 2 to 3 years within our boundaries itself, 2 years ago the sheriffs came in and eradicated a very large garden, and I'm not talking next to our boundary, within 5 miles inside the ranch. So the influx on the forest is so bad, they're actually starting to look for other areas to grow. Now, coincidentally, 2 years ago, that was the year I was shot at also because I was too close, apparently. So, you know, I consider state of emergency long overdue. I mean, you have to worry if you drive home at night on, you know, public roads, forest highways. You know, I don't like to see my wife and child drive to the ranch from the valley at night. It's not safe. So if, you know, I agree with everybody else's comments in here that, you know, major action needs to be taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Holly Madrigal, 3rd District candidate, and one of the main themes that I'm hearing here today is the incredible resource that we have here in the community as far as the resource of eyes on the road, and that it seems like whatever would be done if a state of emergency is declared, that there's a resource here. As the woman mentioned, you know, she reported something and it didn't really seem like there was any follow-up or continued action on that. So I think if residents can be assured that they'll be heard, and if they see something that they know is questionable, that they'll know it'll be followed up on, or at least someone will get back to them, I think that could really go a long way to helping. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, please come forward. State your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Sheila Fetzer, and I have quite a bit of property at the opening coming in here, which is private property. And last year, there was a pretty good sized garden found on my property. And it's not just way out there, it's in, and it's scary to know that people are creeping around on your property. I have, you know, hunters also, or myself, wanting to just use my own property. And it's a pretty scary situation, so.
Thank you, Sheila. Yes, go ahead, Ms. Roth.
My name is Anne Marie Bauer. I'm a permittee on the National Forest, and I'm also a teacher at school. Last year, I was shot at right close to where we stay out there, the cabin that we stay at, within a half a mile, within a mile. And this year, those guys have backed off a little bit because I think they scared themselves. We screamed and yelled at them. They shot at us. I mean, it was not fun. But one of the things that I want to say, besides what everybody else says I agree with, if we get these guys out of there, they're just going to come back once our effort is gone. This is a one-time effort. I mean, it's not like we're pouring this money into it every year. I think we need to look forward to having legitimate entities in that forest. When it gets to be hunting season, I feel a lot safer. It might be closer to harvest season, but I feel a lot safer because there are a lot of people out there that I consider my friends and I consider protection. They all have guns, they're hunting. There are more people legally in the forest. If we had our trails really well maintained, if our fire crews could go out there and really maintain those trails, open them up every year so that people could hike on them easily, people could ride on them more easily, you could get the public down into those areas. Those trails follow where those old trails used to go from spring to spring to spring. They go right through every grove just because they went where the water was also. And so if we could maintain those trails and get people on those trails, those guys are going to be less likely to want to come back in. If we could have biomass harvest, if we could let some selective logging back in, all these things, you know, would help keep our forests more healthy and more protected without having to marshal in the National Guard. I think is a very good idea. And I'm also very concerned about how long any kind of analysis is going to take before we get in a cleanup. I mean, time is really of the utmost importance.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is quick. My name's Darlene Connor, and I've lived here since 1953. I retired from the post office. My husband retired from the Forest Service. So we've been using the forest out there forever, generations, going hunting and fishing. Just here the first week of July, I couldn't wait to take my 10-year-old granddaughter out there backpacking to Balmagilliard. We had to climb over 4 trees in the trail to even make that walk, which is probably the most popular trail in the forest. We got down there, we camped for 2 nights. We weren't afraid of the environment, we were more afraid of where we were, just because of previous years. But I wanted to do this, so we did. We went in, Came out fine. I'm talking to people about my trip, and they go, "Boy, that was very dangerous. Have you ever been to the falls?" And I said, "No, that's one of the things I wanted to try to do this trip." They go, "Well, it's a good thing you didn't. There's 3 gardens between there and Georges Valley, so it's a good thing you didn't." So we came out, and I fulfilled my agreement with my granddaughter. However, now I've also hunted in there for 30 years probably. Last year I was scared to death to go out and pack my gun. This year I don't even think I'm going to get a license because it's a waste of money to go out and sit in your rig and wait for one to run in front of you. You can't walk the trails. So I'm guilty of not staying in touch with my community, but I'm just one of those people that wish I could get more out of my forest, and I'm ashamed of what we offer here, and we can't let people go out and enjoy it. So that's my.
Okay, we're gonna bring it back to the board. I think we've had a lot of good information today by numerous public, during the public expression, public comment. I have to agree with one individual that got up and spoke about the educational component. I participated a number of years ago in Potter Valley in a program that by then, it was Attorney General Duke Nation at the time, and it was called Rural Areas Against Drugs. And what it did was educated, as you have said, the public on how to get information to your law enforcement, to your Forest Service, and a big effort was put forth in Potter Valley, and law enforcement knew that there were, or suspected, I guess is the best word to use, that there were 3 drug houses within Potter Valley within a mile of the school. And they were able to get enough information that all 3 of those private property were busted, and took away the danger from the school as well as Central Potter Valley. I can remember as far back as 1978, being a longtime resident, that we disallowed our children to go in the National Forest or to even ride out and camp over at the PG&E campgrounds for the very issues that we've talked about here today. I know I'm committed to move forward on taking some type of an action, but I would rather hear from my fellow board members first. Supervisor Pinches.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I thought that was really interesting, and I'm going to read this again from our Congressman Thompson's letter. It says, one sentence, it says, it's more than time to take our forest back. That's admitting, when I made the comments a couple of weeks ago that we've lost the forest. When we get our congressman admitting that we've lost the forest, I think it's due time to do something. I remember going back, I used to pack kids up to where Bob and Dark Connors used to go back in the Yola Bullies, the old bomb brigade. And we always had to stop at the forest station to even check in, because out here the Forest Service would come out and check and make sure you had fire tools and had your proper fire permit. You know, that was a pretty effective check station right then. There's very few limited points of access into our national forest. But the main point I'd like to get here to today, we talk about what we're doing in Mendocino County. You know, there's 5 other counties that either join or have a good economic impact from our Mendocino National Forest. There's Tehama, Glen, Trinity, Lake, and Colusa. I think that one of the steps we could do would be to send a letter to these other counties and get them. We need more than the Mendocino County Deputy Sheriff's Office involved. We need more than, you know, these other counties, they have resources too. And I think just because it's named the Mendocino National Forest, they're coming in from the eastern side, and we need to collectively get together, and I think we can, well, I know we can do a better job than what we're doing now. I'm not going to sit here and say we can eradicate every marijuana garden in Mendocino National Forest, but I don't think that's really our goal. We just want to get it back to where the people own the forest again. And we need to go from the basic concept that we have lost the forest on every level. I mean, even the Forest Service can't even run their programs out there because their employees are afraid to go out there. you know, there's a large level of intimidation. I mean, a person comes up to a deputy sheriff and points a gun at him. Well, a deputy sheriff's going to take action, but if you're a fisherman or a camper or a person with a family out there, you're going to leave the force and never come back. And they've won the war. We can't allow that to happen. So I'd like to see some action here today. I mean, this item wasn't on the agenda because we just want to talk about the problem. Everybody in this room knows the problem. We need to move forward. But the first thing I'd like to see done, Madam Chair, is a letter sent to these 5 other counties and try to get together, maybe start out with a meeting to come up with a cohesive plan of what we are going to do the county-wise collectively. We need to get the Forest Service more involved in this. I frankly don't care what they're doing in the National Forest in Pennsylvania. I want the Mendocino County, or the Mendocino National Forest straightened up. So if we could move forward to that, and the efforts of rehabbing these marijuana gardens, first of all, I don't believe you can ever rehab a marijuana garden, because that means the deer and the wildlife are already wiped out, especially if they've been there for a couple of years. I commend the Willis Environmental Center and all the people to do that. But it really doesn't make a lot of sense to go out there and clean up one marijuana garden when you're watching 4 new outfits come by to mess up 4 other locations. So we got to stop the problem in the first place, or at least slow it up to where it's regular. And the last thing I'd like to push the Forest Service is get back to a multiple use policy. You know, when we closed down the logging in the Mendocino National Forest and limited the grazing rights for ranchers in the National Forest, what you did is you run those people out of business and we replaced them with drug cartels. Good trade anyway, huh? That was a good trade. So I think we need to push the National Forest to get back, and like I say, I'm not concerned about what they do in other national forests, but we need to get back where we take ownership of our national forest and push the federal government back to a that doesn't mean we have to go out there and clear cut our national forest. If we just cut 50% of our dead, disease, and dying timber, it would help our economy significantly. And there's lots of areas there should be more ranchers out there running their cattle, because when you get other types of uses out there, just by the inset of other people using the national forest, that's going to be a big discouragement of the major marijuana operations coming in. But I think we can do more with the checkpoints. But I'd like to start out, Madam Chair, with maybe an ad hoc committee to get this together, to write a letter to the other counties. And we really got to attack this, because it is, I really believe it's the largest problem we have in Mendocino County, is we've lost our national forest, and we intend to take it back.
And I also think that an ad hoc committee, Supervisor Pinches, could work with law enforcement throughout this process. And I also think that a declaration of emergency might be something the ad hoc would come back with. I will have a CSAC meeting September in Sacramento, but I think this calls for, you know, contacting through a letter the Board of Supervisors throughout the impacted counties, and arrange maybe a meeting with our ad hoc committee and whomever they may appoint to go forward and have a unified effort. I think that is also important to our elected officials, both at a state and U.S. level, because they will pay attention when so many counties and elected officials come together, and maybe there'll be more opportunity for us as far as funding of law enforcement and cleanup within our national forests. Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A number of comments I'd like to make. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone that is spending a good part of your day. Some of you have driven long distances, others of you are local, for coming forward and really giving us a variety of perspectives on really the singular issue of, as Supervisor Pinches says, taking our forest back. I think that what we really are going to need to do, and this would be basically the board's conversation, is we really need to have some strategic planning on this. We need to think strategically about what the best way is to sort of shine the spotlight on the issue. One thing I'd like to say first of all about the Forest Service is that, and it's not, and I don't really think this has really come out, and I referenced this with a few of my comments at the board meeting when we first talked about this a number of weeks ago. And the Forest Service really doesn't have very much latitude to really talk about this issue, but certainly elected officials can. And that is the budget that the U.S. Forest Service operates under. I'm currently a member of the Bureau of Land Management Resource Advisory Committee for Northern California, and previously was, when it was active, involved with the California Coastal Advisory Group, the PAC, Provincial Advisory Council for the U.S. Forest Service. And we had the opportunity to have one of the special agents come to the meeting and give us a detailed presentation on their efforts. And you know, there at the time, I think it was one agent was responsible for something like 50,000 acres of territory. So what has happened in the last 5 years or so is the U.S. Forest Service's budget at the federal level has been hammered. They can't talk about it, but it's just a fact. They're not given the resources that they need to just do their basic things. I mean, someone mentioned trail maintenance here. And I think the idea of 24-hour patrols to really stop the invasion on these levels of the roads and setting up the infrastructure is really a great idea as a periodic and incremental step. But it takes resources to do this, and the Forest Service is not given. I mean, not every federal agency. I mean, we all know what the federal government is facing right now, but the U.S. Forest Service in particular has really been clobbered with the budgetary allocations. That compared, you can compare it, you can check it out historically compared to Bureau of Land Management, which has fared a lot better in the last 5 years. And they still have resource deprivation with respect to drug surveillance and drug curtailment. So I think we need to be aware of this, and we need to figure out, and that's going to be a difficult one strategically for us to figure out how we can impact the U.S. Forest Service budget. We need to shine the spotlight probably on this as a local issue and get extraordinary attention to it. So I think that actually it's county council that really should be looking into the state of the emergency. Is this the best option towards the solution set? Is there a better one? And council could, I think, best advise the board on that at a future meeting. What does it do? What does it not do? What avenues could it help us gain in terms of trying to get resources to this attention? Because this is really, it's a resource issue. I think Supervisor Pinch's idea about letters to the other counties is excellent. What you do in that course is not just local governance, but you're also tapping into other congressional districts. And this is going to be key because you're going to have Democratic members, you're going to have Republican members, and it's going to be that would be a strategic approach in terms of then figuring out, are we going to go after special allocations? Can we go after some special emergency funding? But that's really going to be the way, I think, to target it. Once we do that, and we make a decision on state of emergency, is that another component of a plan that is strategic? Is that we could have a regional forum once we have the other counties on board, and I think that they would get on board. We could have a regional forum, and we absolutely need to invite Congressman Thompson, Senators Boxer and Feinstein, all of which have been supportive historically with gaining federal drug money to benefit the forest. But the amount that has been referenced here, the $250,000 obtained by the efforts of, I think, all three of them, is really a drop in the bucket compared to what we need. I mean, it really should have been $2.5 million, but that's just the share that our national forest got. So can we get some special funds? Would the state of emergency assist us in doing so? But I think we need to really come up with a regional forum and get our federal elected representatives, if they're not able to attend their highest staff levels out of the Bay Area for our two senators and locally for Congressman Thompson, and actually have a community forum about how we want to approach this problem and the $2.5 million that we really want.
Thank you, Supervisor Smith. Supervisor McCowan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's no denying there's a huge problem here. We had 4 members of the public say that they had been shot at on the National Forest. And it's clear that the situation is out of control. And yet we could throw $250,000, 2.5 million, 25 million at the problem, and it still wouldn't stop it. Because here in California and nationally, we've created an underground black market economy that has given an artificial value to something that by itself shouldn't be worth much more than backyard tomatoes. And until that equation changes, we're going to have this problem. I support all the work that is being done by the sheriff, by the Forest Service, by the tribal police, by the other agencies that are affected by this. But it's a battle that can't be won as long as marijuana has this artificially inflated value. So the only real solution to it is an end to federal prohibition. What would it take to bring that about? I don't know. I think we do need to do everything we can to raise the profile of this problem and hopefully start getting some people's attention. A declaration of emergency might be a very appropriate way to do that, and I think that we should ask county council to consider what are the implications of that, how appropriate would that be from a legal standpoint. But just doing more of the same isn't really going to get us to a solution. You know, it's an almost overwhelming problem, and as much resources as we're able to marshal, and of course the county, the state, and the federal government all have severe budget problems, the growers have a lot more resources to devote to this issue than we do. That's why they're out there in such numbers, and despite all the efforts that we've made, what I keep hearing is that there's really more of a presence than ever before. And with all due respect, the one gentleman commenting on making progress, speaking of the Fresno area, they took out 500,000 plants, I guess it was last year, 450,000 this year. Well, that's really not an indication we're getting a handle on the problem. As long as there is this artificial economic incentive for people to get out there and take the risk, they'll take the risk. And you can arrest all the foot soldiers you want, you can arrest all the middlemen that you want, you can arrest the kingpins, and they'll be replaced by new kingpins, because there will always be someone willing to take the risk to make the money.
Thank you, Supervisor McCowan. We are way behind with our timed item, correct? Yes. And so we do need to move along. Either we need to adjourn for our timed item for 11:30, and take this up after we come back from lunch. So what is Supervisor Colfax?
I think the comments that have been made from the audience and by the supervisors tell us the magnitude of the problem. I have to confess that I am not impressed by the strategies that have been laid out for us by those that are here today in an official capacity. It seems like we're working hard, it's a tough job, and we've done great things elsewhere, but I'm on the ground performance here in Mendocino County. The sheriff's great efforts notwithstanding, it is a tragedy. It's not something that has come upon us. 24 years ago, I was sitting up here calculating, I had a summer camp, an academic summer camp for kids over in the Anderson Valley. We used to finish up the summer camp with a 13-mile hike down the Rancherie River. We did it the first year, it was great. The kids loved it. They had to go in and out of the water. They were first time city kids had ever been doing this. The second year we did it, we noticed people coming down along the river and standing there and in the shadows. The third year we saw people coming down, and they had what looked like they were sticks, but they may have been guns. They intimidated all of us. The fourth year we abandoned the Rancheria River hike. So that's been around for 24 years, the kind of thing where people are intimidated and cannot enjoy, take advantage of what's out there. I share the pessimism of that's been expressed by Supervisor McGowan here, but I do think here that some of the interdiction that needs to be done across the county, I see them coming up and down Mountain View Road, and I can tell you, and I can see what's happening in Faulkner Park, at the other end of the county. But it's the interdiction and the efforts that could be made, I think, would at least create a kind of tone that this is not a friendly place. to be able to do this. And I get the impression here that there are people out there that really regard this, and I've heard this from other former supervisors, and I've heard this from people in the community, that there really seems to be no systematic effort to do some simple things like making it uncomfortable. Where those who are out there on the streets driving their junk cars or their junk pickups down to take water in or take supplies in or out at 5 o'clock, between 5 and 7. I can tell you where they are just because I drive around my 5th district. And I can spot them. If people could be pulled off and just checked for whatever reason, for the obvious reasons of taillights or whatever else it might be. But if we're not making any effort here to interdict these efforts, going in and wiping out one and then another big plantation after another, I don't believe is going to be a solution, because if it makes money, as Supervisor McGowan points out, if it makes money, they will come, and it's not to a baseball field, it's to a gold mine, that if you can make it through a season, there's a big payoff. And that part of it here, I think, can be dealt with some common sense tactics. And I sometimes wonder if the big picture gets lost in some of the lower level bureaucratic technological strategies that are brought to us.
Thank you, Supervisor Colfax. We need to move forward. Supervisor Pinches.
Madam Chair, to move this along here, I don't want to leave here today without trying to do something. So I'd like to make a motion to, number 1, direct county council to report back on a state of emergency. Number 2, communicate with the 5 other counties, that would be Tehama, Glen, Trinity Lake, and Colusa, on the problem in our Mendocino National Forest. And number 3 would be to form an ad hoc committee to make sure that this effort here today doesn't die, and we kind of have keep it moving forward, because it's just not acceptable. So that would be my motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Pinches, seconded by Supervisor McCowan. Supervisor Colfax, comment.
I would support this enthusiastically, but I would suggest here that perhaps if we had the Criminal Justice Committee of the Board of Supervisors deal with this, perhaps
that would be fine, just as long as we put it in committee. I would so not create the ad hoc, but put it in the criminal justice committee.
I see County Counsel's shadow. She's in the shadows. Right?
I was going to suggest that you have 4 standing committees that could address this, including the Public Resources Committee or Criminal Justice Committee or the Health and Human Services Committee.
Yeah, I think we should work that out. But I think rather than an ad hoc committee, which tends to be sometimes not taken as seriously.
To move this forward, I'll amend my motion to put it in the Criminal Justice Committee.
Thank you very much. I'll be happy to second the motion.
Well, actually, the motion has a second, but I'll concur to the amendment.
Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Pinches, the amendment has been seconded. Clerk, please reread the motion.
Okay, number 1 is to direct county council to report back on a state of emergency. Number 2 is to communicate with 5 of the counties on the problem. That's Tehama, Glen, Trinity Lake, and Colusa. And number 3 is to refer this to the Criminal Justice Committee.
Madam Chair, the issue relative to referring it to the Criminal Justice Committee has not been properly agendized. My suggestion would be to drop that from the motion, and we'll put it back on for the 10th, because in addition, I think it needs to be very clear what is actually being referred to the committee.
That's fine.
And that should be set forth on an agenda summary.
Can your office then bring that back to
Yes,
the
we
agenda
can.
for those 2 issues?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
And I concur.
Okay. Clerk, I'm going to come back to you. I want to make sure the motion reads.
I might still need some help.
Okay.
Direct county council to look into and report back on a state of emergency. Refer to a criminal justice committee.
And communicate with the 5 adjacent counties.
Thank you. And communicate with the 5 adjacent counties.
Okay, with respect to the referral, that's not part of the motion at this point.
Right.
It's basically to direct staff to bring it back on August 10th to refer it to the Criminal Justice Committee.
That'd be appropriate.
There should be state of emergency declaration.
And I would like to explain the Criminal Justice Committee is a standing committee of the board. Later today, we will be setting the date. I believe it's the 9th of August they might meet, but it sounds like it'd be further into September.
Or you can set any time for that committee to meet.
For the standing committee to meet.
You can change the date.
Okay, but agendas are posted for all standing committees, and I think that is an excellent referral to that particular committee. So we are going to take the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We are going to adjourn for our 11:30 timed item. We're very late, and that will be for a no-host board luncheon recess at Dan's Market, My Cafe, followed by a tour of Round Valley Airport improvements, the Covelo Sidewalk Improvement Project, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs Tabor Lane Improvement Project. So we will be coming back, what time, 1 o'clock? Okay, we will be coming back into session here at 1 o'clock. Anyone that would like to join us, please do so.
Them star, you know, every little thing I just be a shut up and chop up and, you know, I walk one star. I say this is a story that I've got today.
About to matter. As the Mendocino County Air Quality Management District, the Board of Supervisors serves as its Board of Directors. But before we go right into it, and I apologize to everyone for being so late, I do need to announce that the tour didn't take place. And I'd like to thank staff from Department of Transportation for their patience with us. But the tour of the Round Valley Airport improvements, the sidewalk improvement project, and Tabor Lane improvements will take place after the adjournment of this meeting. We will go forward on it, and then, let's see. The other announcement I'd like to make right now is that we will have, the Board of Supervisors will have a special meeting, and it's scheduled for tomorrow, Wednesday, August 4th, beginning at 10 a.m. And that will be back in Ukiah at the Board of Supervisors chambers.
Madam Chair, I just want to make
Council?
one clarification that the meeting will adjourn at the conclusion of the tour.
Okay, thought about that after I said it. Thank you. All righty, Mr. Brown, and I would like to just basically say what the presentation is. It's by the Air Quality Management District regarding the impacts of the state diesel risk reduction plan and the state air toxic control measures for the control of diesel emissions. Do you want to go ahead and
yeah, I have one
introduce
question.
the subject?
Yeah, I have one question for the chair first. Is just how much time would you like me to take on this? I've heard varying things. I had requested 30 minutes.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's what I will aim for then. Yes, I'm Chris Brown, AICP. I'm the Air Pollution Control Officer for Mendocino County Air Quality Management District. It's good to be here today. I have provided already a fairly long report, which you should have, that contained a lot of information about diesel rules, and there is in that document, I'm trying to find it right now, is a table that should look something like this, multicolored. This is in a big handout, so that's got a list of most of the diesel rules and some basic information about them. So that may be useful to use as a reference as we go through things. I also gave you a copy of a handout of presentation. I'm just going to use that as notes for me. I'm going to try to move through things fairly quickly. And then we'll get to questions. So I was going to give a quick update on the status of the district since I'm here. District is doing good. We're in good fiscal shape at this point. Looks like we're going to be putting a good amount of money into the bank at the end of last year. Still haven't closed the books, but we should be in good shape. We're working with EPA on getting a Section 105 grant, which is used to support our overall operations. EPA has not given us that funding before, and that may be, well, it is necessary to keep our permit fees under control and to support the basic work that we have to do for our air program. We also are going to be meeting with EPA in the very near future, possibly as soon as tomorrow, to talk about changes to our Title V major facility rules related to greenhouse gases and recent changes in the Clean Air Act. And I'm going to use that opportunity to nudge them that if they want us to make changes in federal rules, they should give us some money to do that. We are also working on 2 rule updates, which will be coming to you shortly. One is related to diesel engines, the topic of today's presentation, and also another change to our open burning rules, mainly looking at fees and trying to do a little better cost recovery in open burning. Both of those items should be coming to you on September 14th. We have a public workshop on the open burning rules coming up on August 17th. We had a public workshop on the diesel rules last week. With that, I'm going to dive into the diesel update. Why are we ready? This is a great presentation, by the way, but it's not up there. A lot of animation and color and sound to keep you awake after lunch. The diesel is being regulated. Diesel emissions are being regulated because they represent a significant health risk. They were initially quantified by the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment in California, and that research has been recognized and reaffirmed by US EPA, ASDTR, and also with the EU and other countries around the world. Ultrafine, which is the very finest components of diesel particulate matter, are now strongly believed to cross the barrier between the lungs and the blood directly. So diesel exhaust particles actually do enter the bloodstream, and this is believed to be a cause of a rise in blood pressure, which occurs after exposure to diesel PM. ARB and the air districts have a clear legal obligation to reduce public exposure to air toxics. That's one of our primary missions. What is in diesel PM? The main component that's of the most concern is what's called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. We say PAHs for short. Those compounds, it's a number of different compounds that are similar in nature. They can be mutagenic, which causes gene mutations. They're carcinogenic, which can cause cancer. And they're also tetraogenic, which is linked to developmental problems. PAHs are one of the most powerful cancer-causing agents found in cigarette smoke and other types of smoke. And I will caveat my remarks by saying cigarette smoking is clearly the #1 cause of lung cancer in this country, and that is a serious concern, although it is not a diesel or district concern. There's also mercury, formaldehyde, acrolein, BEPH, which is an endocrine disruptor, which those are chemicals that are coming down increasing concern these days, and numerous other chemicals in diesel exhaust. 70% of the air toxic risk in the state of California is from diesel, according to the Air Resources Board. And this risk is not just about the emissions, it's also about exposure, concentration, and time of exposure. Diesel risk is concentrated based on ARB's research at ports, rail yards, along busy roadways, near stationary engines that operate a lot. Risk is generally confined to the immediate area of the activity. If you look at Mendocino County, we don't have any ports or major rail yards as classified by EPA and ARB. We don't even have roadways that have enough traffic density to qualify as a traffic risk or a health risk from traffic in the county. And there is, of course, a worker exposure issue, but that is not something that's regulated by the district. There are other agencies that deal with worker exposure. There are a number of ways to reduce risk. You can lower emission standards for new engines, which has been done. You can make diesel fuel burn cleaner, which has been done. And the big challenge is reduce emissions from existing equipment using so-called in-use regulations. The last one is the most difficult challenge. There's also additional benefits that come with these reductions. You can reduce NOx emissions, which lead to ozone formation. You also can reduce greenhouse gas emissions by getting cleaner, more efficient engines on the market sooner. So following that information, that's all from the Diesel Risk Reduction Plan that was developed by Air Resources Board 10 years ago. It's a rough outline of the plan. They started a rule development process for diesel engines. And they initially started with those first two categories I talked about, cleaner emission standards for engines, new engines, and making fuel cleaner. Those activities have been done. If you look at the spreadsheet, actually I take that back, it's on the prior page in the big report. There's a spreadsheet that lists those rules and those changes. Those have been relatively non-controversial, not a lot of public outcry about those changes. Where the public started getting increasingly concerned was the in-use regulations, which are the ones that are outlined on the multicolored chart. And that's what I'm going to spend my time talking about here. There were a number of problems as ARB went to develop these rules. And actually, let me run through very briefly the main categories of rules. They broke, normally EPA, when they look at engines, they break them down into two categories. They have on-road engines that power vehicles and off-road engines that power equipment. ARB broke this down into a lot finer gradations, and there's a total of 12 or 15 diesel rules, depending on how you look at things. To run through them very quickly, there's rules for transit agencies, 2 different rules for transit agencies. There are rules for waste collection vehicles, which pick up garbage at the curb. There are rules for public fleets, which DOT can talk about. There's rules on school bus idlings. There's rules on stationary engines. There's rules on transportation units that are attached to a refrigerated trailer. There's rules for portable engines. There are rules on school and bus idling. Rules on hovercraft, 2 separate rules. There's a rule for off-road equipment, a rule for on-road commercial-owned equipment. There's the so-called smart weight truck rule, which is aerodynamics, reducing fuel usage. There's cargo handling rule, and there's a drayage truck rule. EPA would have done this with 1 rule for all on-road sources, 1 rule for all off-road sources. That process introduced a lot of complexity, dividing it up in that fashion. And that's a major problem with the implementation of these rules. By creating, and they also staff went through and created special exemptions for a number of special uses. For example, anything on San Clemente Island has been exempted from regulatory authority. However, anything on the islands there off of San Francisco have not been exempted from regulatory action. So it depends what island you're on, whether you're subject to regulation or not. They exempted, as I said in my written report, space plane landing engines that power landing and runway lights at Edwards Air Force Base. No explanation why that special exemption was created, but it was. And that's all done at the staff level. And what has been happening is ARB staff has been getting into a political role. They've been negotiating with industry on who gets an exemption and who doesn't get an exemption. Political decisions are being made at the staff level rather than being made by appointed or elected officials. And what they've managed to do is to create a mountain of complexity out of a molehill. In addition to this, each one of the rules has had the deadlines modified or changed since adoption. You literally need a scorecard to keep track of it. And as they move the goalposts, somebody buys a brand new engine to comply with the rule, then all of a sudden 6 months later, ARB says, oh, guess what? You didn't need to have a brand new engine. So your competitor, who did not do it, now has an advantage over you. That's a deep concern of mine, not the way the district likes to make rules. And just as a case in point on that, on gasoline stations in 2009, ARB did the same thing. They backpedaled a month before a deadline came up. They did the same thing this year on dry cleaners. We had a total of 3 dry cleaners that have closed in Mendocino County, largely because of the rule that's coming up. The last minute they said, well, we're going to let the deadline slip. The fine's going to be $250 if they don't meet the deadline. We only have 1 dry cleaner left. He's already spent his money to go ahead and upgrade. But we had 3 other people who went out of business. ARB's outreach has been lacking. ARB considers Fresno to be a rural community, and so when they do rural adoptions, they try to have a meeting at a rural location, which is Fresno. I've spent a lot of time sitting in traffic in Fresno. I don't consider it rural. They generally tend not to have meetings north of Sacramento, which leaves out large parts of the state. They don't have any representation on their board from north of Sacramento. ARB staff rarely, if ever, considers local climate and economies when adopting their rules. For example, the construction season in Mendocino County is roughly half of the construction season in other parts of the state. We also have the logging industry, which the trucks sit idle for half the year. The additional costs and the additional emission reductions were not factored in when ARB was evaluating the rules. It's a lot more expensive for a construction industry in Mendocino County, which can use their equipment half the time that industry in LA can use their equipment to comply with the rule. And at the same time, they're generating half the emissions. So the cost is not evenly distributed around the state. ARB made a number of mistakes through the rule adoption process. They underestimated, I take that back, they overestimated off-road vehicle emissions by 50%. They recently made that at a meeting in Fresno, one of their rural meetings. They made that announcement. So they're reevaluating that rule. They also significantly underestimated the number of agricultural pumps in rural areas. They reported 11 agricultural pumps in Mendocino County. The district is aware of close to 300 in Mendocino County. The ARB staff, there's been accessibility issues. ARB is not an organization, most people aren't aware of this. They do not issue permits. They don't deal with the public directly. They deal with the public through the local air districts, or they deal with industry. And they weren't prepared when they started basically permitting off-road equipment and on-road trucks with dealing with answering questions from the public, the kind of questions we get on a daily basis related to our regulations. So we'd have folks coming into our office saying, I've called ARB, I can't get an answer. I've called, the phone number's disconnected to the person I was talking to. I've sent them numerous emails. Can you please tell me what I need to do? The district, since we don't enforce the majority of these rules, we cannot provide compliance advice. We can't tell somebody they're okay when they may in fact not be. So they need to talk to the Air Resources Board. Air Resources Board had no mechanism to have a one-on-one conversation with a member of the public. They don't have a front counter. They don't have a general reception number. You basically send an email to the program and you might get a different person on each time you send an email. So they've changed that. They're trying to improve that. Initially, they thought they could do that through websites and so on. And as we know, in a rural area, not everybody has access to the internet. Not everybody uses the internet. So they have improved those. In addition, a lot of ARB staff are technical people. They're not used to dealing one-on-one with the public. ARB has addressed some of the research errors that have been found. They've reevaluated some of the costs and benefits in light of our current economic situation. However, they have not opened up everything that needs to be looked at, in my opinion. There are a number of ARB rule revisions which are under consideration. ARB staff expects to take all of these diesel items to the board in one large batch. At this point, they were talking about late September. That may be pushed back slightly further. The revisions may not address all local concerns, but they should be an improvement. There seems to be a little bit more focus on what these rules are going to do in rural areas. Agricultural pumps are a significant concern at this point. ARB staff has not shown a lot of willingness to adjust that rule. We have a compliance date coming up of January 1st. In order to meet that date, people need to order engines now. They need to install their engines before the rain comes, because a lot of them are near creeks and they can't work near those engines and near the creek when the rains are coming for water quality reasons. And hopefully we can get some kind of signal from ARB of whether that deadline's going to hold or not. There is some local flexibility in our rule that we will be bringing to you shortly for your consideration, but you may choose not to adopt our rule, and that leaves industry with nowhere to go. It is a very serious issue. It's going to very seriously affect agriculture. The agricultural rule is much more stringent than the other rules that have been adopted. And that there's been no explanation as to why that is the case. Frequently when these issues are brought up, ARB staff falls back on talking about grant funding that's available. The district does have grant funding. We've been very successful in bringing in funding, additional funding on top of our basic allocation. We have roughly $180,000 a year. And the last 2 years, we've been able to bring in $100,000 additional on top of that for projects. But when you're talking about a large piece of off-road equipment, we're talking about 1 or 2 vehicles that can be funded at that level versus the demand that there is in this county. And right now, we cannot fund agricultural pumps. They're no longer eligible. We cannot fund on-road trucks for the most part. They are no longer eligible. We can't fund any stationary equipment because those are already regulated. So the only equipment that we can fund is off-road construction equipment and off-road agricultural equipment. And we can do some marine projects as well. The ARB staff has frequently talked about billions of dollars being available. There are billions of dollars available. They are not available in Mendocino County. Those funds are available in urban areas where there's higher population densities and along major transportation corridors, which we are lacking in this county. Because of the lower use of the equipment in this county, the reduction in grant funding that's available in this county, the economic impact of these regulations on an individual piece of equipment basis is much higher than in other parts of the state. With that, I will direct folks on the camera and out there in the world to the district website, which is mendoair.org, and I'm available for questions. I believe we have some members of the public who may want to speak as well.
Okay, basically on the egg pumps themselves, Chris, they made the rule, a stringent rule, for pumps that run 24/7 year-round. Here we have pumps that do not put on even a fraction of the hours. So they're still wondering if they're going to be held responsible for replacement, but you have a rule that will be coming forward.
Yeah, the
for
district,
our local district.
Yeah, the district staff, mainly me, has put a lot of staff time and hours and expense into developing a local rule to address the inadequacies and shortcomings of ARB's rule. I've expressed my opinion fairly strongly to ARB that it's not our job to fix mistakes that were made. The main mistake that I think was made was there was supposed to be a low-use exemption for agricultural pumps.
And it just didn't make it in the final.
The language was dropped by mistake, literally by mistake.
But they have not gone back to correct that mistake, as
yes.
Am I right about that?
Right. And so in some parts of the state, such as the San Joaquin Valley, coincidentally, the Valley Air District, they had a rule before ARB that had an 80-hour exemption. ARB has not forced them to rescind that rule. They've said it's equivalent to their rule, but in actuality, it's not. If we had an 80-hour exemption, we'd have a number of people who would not be subject to the rule. So there's some serious equity issues there, and like I said, that item will come back before you for more discussion. ARB has been meeting with a small group of air districts to talk about changes to that rule. I'm not part of that group because I'm not on the CAPCOA board. However, they're keeping us informed and letting us know what the results of that are. But
And it could be said it's the same for
industry and construction industry here in this county?
The forestry is especially complicated. There are two different definitions of agriculture used by the Air Resources Board in two different divisions. The Mobile Source Division, which oversees vehicles and off-road equipment that moves under its own power, they recognize forestry as agriculture. The Stationary Source Division, which oversees stationary engines and portable engines that are moved from place to place but don't move under their own power, they do not recognize forestry as agriculture. And so initially in my communication with them, we were going to exclude forestry engines, as we always have, under our agriculture exemption. They instructed me to remove that. I found it very surprising that one state agency could have two different definitions of agriculture, but given ARB's size and scope, I'm not hugely surprised.
And I guess I want to express a concern for instances, in both Lake and Mendocino County, there's only one crane that maybe gets used once, perhaps twice a year. So if you're a business that needs a crane, and that business person can no longer operate it, you're going to be having to go towards the Bay Area, Sonoma County, Marin County, which is really going to drive up the cost. And I don't know if you have anything to report on that. And then the grant funding, the main funds go, you said urban areas, but areas that have very bad air, don't meet certain standards. Right. And the rural areas like our area, we can't be in the ballgame. How can we change that?
Well, the grant funds are distributed. There's a couple of different pots of money. Anything from the federal government is distributed only to ozone non-attainment areas. And so we're not eligible for that because we're attainment for the ozone standard. Any funding relating to Prop 1B only gets distributed to what's called transportation corridors, which is Highway 99, I-5, and the freeways going in and out of LA and the Bay Area. Highway 101 is a transportation corridor along the coast, south of San Francisco, but it is not north of San Francisco. And those definitions were drawn up by the legislature when they developed Prop 1B. And at that time, I talked to the county's Sacramento lobbyist, I forget the gentleman's name, recently passed away. But he told me that they basically, could have been, yeah, and he said that they did not need votes from Northern California in the legislature for this, so they didn't need to get support for the bond from up here.
Well, I'd sure like to have suggestions in the future, near future, on how we can change some of the federal allocations that come, as well as how the state allocates it.
I was going to, one other comment you had, I'm sorry, I wanted to address it. Related to equipment that's used infrequently, if it is mobile equipment, there is a low use exemption if it's less than 80 hours a year.
Okay.
And that is being used by a number of people. There is also a low use exemption for portable equipment, and there is a low use exemption, there is not a low use exemption for stationary equipment. However, emergency use equipment like generators, fire pumps, do have a special exemption for them. So there's various uses.
And has there been any discussion about the cost that is going to be to the County of Mendocino and its Department of Transportation? Have we looked at equipment and?
We ran some numbers very early on, but I think their compliance strategy has changed since then. I don't know if you guys want to come up and speak to that at all. Or?
Thank you, Chris. Madam Chair, Board, Kent Stanley, Deputy Director of Transportation. Not only are there lots of rules, it's, to say the least, it's been a moving target all along. And so our strategy right now, fortunately for us, we have such a surplus of old equipment. And with our smaller crew sizes, we're reducing equipment. And each year we're phasing out equipment in order to be in compliance. And at the same time, we're purchasing new equipment.
and eliminating more than we purchase.
Okay. This answers that question. Thank you. Supervisor Pinchas.
Chris, what is our air district? How much deviation can we do from the Air Resources Board?
In terms of the mobile.
Let me throw out an
yeah.
example first.
Okay.
You say you have two departments say that, for instance, timber harvesting equipment, one says exempt, the other one isn't. Do we have the ability to declare that timber harvesting equipment is exempt? Or what flexibility do we have from the Air Resources Board?
Well, there's two different
If you'll
categories.
answer that first question, then I
Yeah.
can move to the second question.
Okay, well, there's two different categories of equipment that are regulated by this. There's mobile equipment.
Yeah, I
If
know.
it moves
I know the
under its own power.
category, but what-
And, well, let me.
What ability do we have to
Yeah.
deviate from the state air quality board?
On mobile equipment, we have no authority at all, because we're not the enforcing agency. So on mobile equipment, that's all enforced by Air Resources Board in Sacramento. If it's stationary or portable equipment, we can adopt a local rule as long as it's more stringent, and or it has some other alternative compliance methods that get us an emission reduction. than
So
we
as
see
long as it's
otherwise.
more restricted, which means nothing. Okay,
You will see shortly
okay,
how we're
brings-
approaching that.
Then why, the air quality management districts were formed in the state to recognize that there's different air quality management, ambient levels and everything throughout the state. So if the state air quality air quality board basically says, well, the only way you can do this is enforce stricter regulations than ours, then why even have the air quality management districts? Do away with them if you got one dictator telling you the way it's gonna be statewide. Because that was what the direction was several years ago when they formed the districts. And I'm saying this for the benefit of our state representative here, maybe that they could propose some changes to that. I mean, it's totally ridiculous for us to try to keep up with the ambient layers in the LA basin. I mean, and it's proven, are we bragging because we've run all but one of our cleaners out of Mendocino County? I don't think that's nothing to brag about. That affects the service and everything. You expect the person in Covelo here to send their uniforms or something to Ukiah to be done. So it's eliminated business, but that's totally unacceptable as far as the certainly in any other agency or whatnot, timber is considered agriculture. I mean, it's considered in every county's crop report and everything. All of a sudden, the air quality board comes and says, well, no, we're not recognizing timber as agriculture. What do we have here? Do we have an air quality board? Do we have a dictator someplace in the state? I mean, this is a huge issue, and I'd like to see our state representative take this up, because if we don't get a separate recognition from an area like the LA Basin, then we're just faced for doom as far as our business activity in this part of the county.
And I will say that there are some provisions in the rules that do recognize our local status. Like there's a low population county provision in the public fleet rule that gives longer timelines to comply. There is one school of thought that you're not far off the base there, that there is these rules are being used as justification to support the regionalization of the air districts, which is something that Mary Nichols has talked about in previous life. She's the current chair of the Air Resources Board.
I'm not an attorney, but sometimes I wish I were. I mean, it seems like that's complete discrimination when you're telling the agriculture pump users that their requirements, don't even count for nothing. I mean, that's to me, this Air Resources Board is discriminatory against agriculture. I mean, it's real clear, but it gets worse than that. I mean, it's unacceptable for not only Mendocino County, but most parts of Northern California even to think that we're going to achieve that. And every time they come up with a tighter rule, we got to go along with it, and it's been devastating to our economy, and it continues. It's going to get worse. And here's another issue. We talked about this before. What about the fire trucks? What about 3 years ago when we had what they called the Mendocino lightning fires, and there were fires all over, and what it brought out every old water truck in the country? Does that mean they're going to have to meet these standards, and they won't? So is there an exemptions use or hours on that? I mean, that's who calls these water trucks? It's the state of California that calls them. Now you got an Air Resource Board that says you can't use them? Well, I bet that's not going to happen. I bet when they need them, they're going to use them.
Yeah, and there is two specific exemptions that are related to emergency equipment. The first one is if it's used to fight fire, it's got lights and sirens, it's exempt, flat out. That's it. So, like City of Fort Bragg Fire Department has a water tanker, got lights on it, fully exempt.
So if a logger out there has a water truck and he puts lights on it, then that makes him exempt?
That would be providing compliance advice for a state rule. We don't do that.
Well, I know.
But let me give you the second
question that a local person would want to know.
Right. Let me go to the second part of the exemption because it is fairly important, and I do want people to hear it. Any hours used under contract to a law enforcement or fire suppression agency, so for example, a logging truck that's used to haul water, those hours do not count towards compliance with the rules. So that they did create that exemption. It does seem to work for some people. Water trucks tend to be the truck that's used the least. It tends to be the oldest truck in the fleet. But if it's exempt for any emergency use, they just have to document it and report it to the state. So, and if it's agriculture use only water truck as well, which is forestry is qualified as agriculture under that rule, that time would be exempt as well.
Supervisor Pinchas and Smith, I want you to know I'm getting a glare off and did earlier, which is really havoc on my eyes. So if Supervisor Smith, if I don't see your
This whole issue
yellow
is
pen.
giving me a glare.
Well,
I would appreciate it if you didn't hold back though.
Okay, I'd like to go to public comment. Please come forward, identify yourself.
Good afternoon, I'm Mike Anderson. I've got a logging business that handles 30-some trucks that fit into this rule that Chris just talked about. I'd like to make a couple comments. Stationary engines and that egg did get hammered, but they did get some pretty good relief through the transportation end. A lot of these grape growers and different producers all up and down the Sacramento Valley use their trucks for a very short amount of time. There's no trucks available, and they recognize that, and there are some issues in here where egg was taken care of, and that helped all of us, actually. Forestry is considered part of egg, and so that helped us as well. Getting back to the pollution issue, we understand that. We understand there's an issue. We also understand that Mendocino County is the 11th cleanest county in the nation for particulate matter. So that's a little troubling for somebody that's being asked to replace this entire fleet to take care of the issues in the San Joaquin and the South Coast airshed. So, but anyway, back to the subject. For the last 2 years, myself, a fellow from Nevada County that is a partner in a business there, a logging business, Associated California Loggers and California Forestry Association, has been making the rounds talking to the board members. And frankly, the board members get it. We explain the situation to them, they get it, and they've been pushing staff to help us. And I keep injecting the word rural California, they keep seeing loggers. And it's unfortunate, but it's just the way it's turned out. Because it is loggers that are there lobbying, trying to make this rule workable. And frankly, all we want to do is get from where we are to where we need to be compliant without going out of business. The first thing we did was we surveyed Mendocino County and Nevada County. And we found that 70% of the heavy-duty trucks in both Mendocino County and Nevada County, and I believe all throughout rural California, northern rural California, 70% of those trucks are pre-1995 trucks, which means they have mechanically fuel-injected engines. The dirtiest trucks out there. They're old trucks, old technology, but that's what we're running. They work. They're going by the wayside slowly. The problem is the rule has a very short time frame to update those trucks. In rural California, not only logging, but the gravel extraction business, most any business that runs trucks is impacted by the short season. We put at most 50,000 miles on our trucks. These guys are running up and down the corridor where the $1 billion in Measure D money went, put 150,000 miles a year in their truck. They update them every 5 or 6, 7 years at the most. They didn't need that money to become compliant. It's really frustrating for us. We had a meeting with the staff. We've been to each board member. We've been to numerous hearings, workshops. We met with staff on a regular basis. But we met with them again here a couple of weeks ago. And one question, a gal that hadn't been in these meetings before made the mistake of asking me, what should we have done? And I said, the simplest thing you could have done was to take that $1 billion in 1B money and spend that where it needed to go to replace some of these old mechanically fuel-injected engines. Instead, they handed it out up and down the transportation corridors to trucking operations that update their trucks every 5 to 7 years, just as a normal business model. It's a little frustrating, but you know, it's done, and it's obviously a federal law anyway, but it's really frustrating that that money went really where it wasn't needed. But back to the 70% of the trucks in Mendocino County, actually all of rural California, the way the rule is currently written, they're required to put particulate matter filters on. These old 1995 and older trucks are worth about $10,000. One particulate matter filter costs $15,000 installed. So I asked them, they said, if there's no filter available, do we still have to update the trucks? And they said, no. And I said, well, what if we have to put 3 filters on to make the truck compliant, and that will work? Is that what you're expecting us to do? Absolutely. So we're supposed to put $45,000 worth of filters on a truck to make it a $10,000 truck to make it compliant and operate. It's not feasible. It's not going to happen.
But that's how the state does business.
Well, I know, but we can't afford to operate that way. And the rule is a 2-step rule, and that's the thing that we talked about. The first part of the rule requires particulate matter control, containment, and that's the particulate matter. And then it's basically, you know, the point where you need a new engine to deal with the NOx issue. And what we've been telling them is we need a longer, stretched out compliance period whereby people can afford to make the transition, number one, and the technology improves, number two. Right now, we have the fellow that in Nevada County has 5 or 6 trucks with particulate matter filters on, and we have 4. They're in the shop constantly. They don't work. And these are, you know, came with the trucks. These are new trucks with new particulate matter filters on them. They don't work. So what we were hoping in the process was to get them to understand that the technology isn't there, and that we need some time for technology to catch up, and to allow us to get beyond this economic situation that I think most people in our industry, with 1 million homes owned by the banks ready to go into dump on the market, pretty confident this is going to last for another 3 or 4 years. Let's see. What we did accomplish was, one evening when we were leaving Sacramento, my son and I were discussing, we knew that in order to get anywhere, we'd have to develop a rule for them, because they weren't going to come up with a rule that was going to deal with it. So what we came back to Sacramento with is we proposed a 10% rule. They want total compliance by 2023. We suggested they start in 2014 and have 10% of the fleet per year compliant with the rule. And frankly, if you don't go at that sort of level, you're never going to get there. So you've got to make a commitment. You've got to get started. But you know, the idea of getting your fleet 100% compliant by 2014 with particulate matter, then turning around and making it NOx compliant is just an absolute killer. The difference for our business between the 10% rule and the way the rule was written was like $2 million in that 12, 15-year period. So lo and behold, they added a new rule at the last meeting that was similar to what we proposed, and we had to go back and talk to them again about why it wouldn't work. And I think they understand it. I think they're going to make a change. The unfortunate thing is it's called the logging truck rule. And the logging truck rule is not going to help Ernie Whip. It's not going to help Baxman Gravel. It's not going to help Northern Aggregate. You know, it's just unfortunate, but we can't get through to them. And the problem is nobody from rural California is there explaining to them that this is an issue. And, you know, we've talked to numerous different entities all over the state, and we just can't get their attention. But this thing is an absolute killer when it comes to jobs. I think as you're driving up and down the road, you see trucks. And my best estimate is 1 truck out of 100 is particulate matter compliant. And 1 truck out of about 1,000 is probably totally compliant with this rule package, which means compliant with particulate matter and NOx. And, you know, when 70% of the trucks in rural California, the old mechanical engine trucks, are worth $10,000, to go from there to brand new trucks are compliant with the whole package, it's impossible. People don't have that type of operating revenue. Nobody's going to make a loan to do that. I mean, it just does not make sense when you're looking at the short operating season, you know, we're constrained by it. So what's going to happen, and I think Chris pointed out pretty well, the Air Board has done a very poor job of explaining to the public and to businesses what is going on. And it's amazing because these people are sitting back saying, there is no way the state of California is going to put me out of business. Yes, there is. Anyway. Carrie.
So, what do you suggest? How can we help you as the board of directors of the Air District in the next hearing, or what can this board do to help you?
You know, logging, I think logging is going to be fine. I really do. I think the rule package that we came up with is going to help logging trucks in rural California. Like I said, it's not going to help all the other trucks that are out there. And there's so many of them, and so many people are, if this thing goes through as it is, and there's no indication that they're going to make any changes for rural California, the only way that I think your board can really help is if somehow you can mobilize the other counties and get them to understand what's coming. I think they're all living in that area north of Sacramento called denial.
Oh, boy. Okay, thank you so much. Oh, Supervisor Pinches.
Well, I guess this is a question for Chris. Now, because the Interstate Commerce Code, that doesn't affect any truck coming in from other states or Mexico, right?
They claim it does. Yeah, they claim that any truck operating in California.
Well, they claim that I don't think that's going to hold, you know, the Bush administration tried to stop some Mexican trucks, and that didn't work.
They could get sued. Couldn't they be sued for that?
You certainly would think so.
Interstate Commerce?
They managed to overestimate the amount of emissions for the construction fleet. I think that in actuality, somewhere between 28 and 40% is what the actual emissions were. They agreed that they were at least twice as much as it was supposed to be. I mean, they're way out there in left field.
But local truckers of any type won't be able to compete with trucks coming in from neighboring states, including Mexico, right? Because they won't have to meet the standards because of the state commerce.
My understanding is that they're not, that they have supposedly got this all figured out, Chris.
Well, I don't think they have because they're not going to change the Interstate Commerce Code just for California's air quality or air resources.
You and Mary Nichols ought to get in one-on-one on this.
I'd like that.
Yeah. I was going to say on that though.
You know, it's funny you mentioned One Nation, Mike. My point is Air Resources Board, is it a board represented by the people of the state of California, or is it a dictator? And I think you just answered the question.
Okay, let Mr. Brown respond, and then we're going to go to Supervisor McCowan.
Okay, I was going to say on that exact issue there, John, I talked about the issue of interstate trucks and international trucks with one of the top air lawyers in the state who works for another air district. And I asked her opinion about it, and because there was a case in the late 1990s related to out-of-state vehicles. And you used to bring a car in from out of state to California, and you had to pay a smog check impact fee. It could be pretty steep if your vehicle wasn't California certified. And that was struck down by the courts. And the reason that was struck down by the courts, according to this attorney who was involved in it, was that it is, they were looking at where the vehicle is registered. And ARB is claiming, and whether the courts accept this claim or not, I will leave it to finer legal minds than mine, looking over at Janine. They're claiming they're only regulating use. They're not regulating where the vehicle's registered. So the law says if you use this vehicle in California, you're subject to these emission standards. What the courts will do with that language, it's hard to say. I think it's quite conceivable, since there's a severability clause, and I've said this before to the board, that the court would strike down that language and would basically, the requirements would be imposed on California truckers only. And then I think they've got a real problem.
Supervisor McCowan, and then I want to check and see if there's any more public comment. Please go forward.
Thank you. Is there any kind of a ballpark of the percentage reduction that they hoped to achieve by this rule, and then compare that to the economic collapse, which has taken so many trucks off the road and therefore arguably achieved far more than the rule ever could?
There is, and it's more than trucks. The actual largest reductions, because of the economy, have been in the off-road construction equipment side of things. If you look at Sacramento, you've got developments going on for miles and miles and miles. That's all gone, and those vehicles are sitting. So ARB is recognizing that. They are working that into their rule. It's very strange when you look at their emission reduction targets. It's a downward slope because equipment's replaced naturally on its own. So what they're trying to do is the emissions are dropping naturally. They're trying to accelerate it. And so what you see now is the emission reductions have occurred in a large part because of the economy, but the equipment is actually going to be around longer. So the future slope is much less gentle. It almost flattens out. And so they're trying to, keep forcing it down after the economy comes back. They do seem generally aware and generally concerned. Mary and James, I've talked to them about it personally, about the economic impacts of these rules and in the current economy. And I know that the governor has expressed that to them. The issue is, how is it going to be addressed at the staff level? How is it going to be addressed when it gets before the board? Is there going to be anything in there for rural parts of California? And I think Mike did a great job of saying the rural folks aren't at the table really on this. And in the past, this board has adopted the on-road rule. There was a resolution that was shared with other counties. It was also sent to our electeds in Sacramento. I think that's something the board may want to consider. We can bring that back at a future date. It was done as a board of supervisors, if I recall. And there's also possibility of having some board members go to Sacramento and testify. Supervisor Delbar went to Sacramento and testified on the on-road rule at the hearing. He was the lead-off speaker on that, and I really do feel he did a bang-up job and made a very strong case. Whether it was listened to, I don't know.
Supervisor Smith.
Do you want to go to
Oh, would you mind?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Anyone else from the public desires to speak, please come forward, state your name.
Ruth Valenzuela with Assemblyman Wesley Chesbrough's office. And first of all, thank you all for being here. This is great to see the board in Covelo. The Assemblyman has talked with Mike and Miles both about the 10% solution, which he thought sounded like a pretty good idea. He talked with Mary Nichols, the chairwoman, Mary Nichols, and sent her a copy of the 10% solution, wrote a letter, and also had a conversation with her about it. She seemed very supportive. Very glad to hear that they're adopting something close to what he's asking for. I was not aware that it was called the logging truck rule, which we need to now. I'm sure that the Assemblyman will be more than happy to contact Mary Nichols again and say thank you very much, but not quite. So I definitely just want to let you know that I'll go back to him with that, and any other suggestions that you have for me to give to him, I'm happy to translate to.
Thank you so very much. Anyone else? Sir.
Just wondering, is this comment just for
Identify yourself.
Item number 9?
Identify
Henry
your
Mangle.
And you're asking what item this is on the agenda?
Yes.
It's 9A.
Oh, okay.
And we're seated as the Board of Directors for the Air District.
Okay.
Yes, but we will be moving forward shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Director Smith.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just back to some of the comments of Mr. Anderson, and I think that, you know, it's really commendable that one small business owner worked and galvanized and worked with others in that industry to sort of do some very proactive policy changing and was very vigilant about it from his description of the repeated visits, which I was aware of, but I think he really further elucidated the complexities and the amount of times that they went back over time to really bring this change forward. And then hearing from Ms. Valenzuela from our Assembly Member's office that they didn't quite get it right. So that was going to be my question. If Mr. Brown thought that our Board of Supervisors weighing in on this issue and getting some very succinct language on great progress here, but would related industries where the Air Board thought there was some similar applicability, be able to broaden that new rule direction. And then what we could do is we could CC the Northern California counties and suggest that they may want to follow with something similar. Do you think that's warranted? Do you think that would be appropriate?
I think that's a very good approach. Now, I was not aware of the 10% approach because the on-road rule. I'll be honest with you, that's my expert on the on-road rule, I think that is a very reasonable approach to go across the board with. The rub you run into is we already have people. We have 2 people that I know of, and many more are probably out there, who are facing closure because of the stationary source rule. And other people have complied and they've chosen not to. They're becoming belligerent, and their businesses are going to go away. Because of the timelines, because where the timelines for all of these things have kicked in. So you do have to focus it, I think, to rules that have upcoming compliance dates as opposed to compliance dates in the past. But I think it's a good opportunity. I think the on-road rule, the off-road rule, there's still rumors about an off-road agricultural equipment rule. This could be built into it. It softens the economic impact, and I think it gets them what they need. I have found approaching ARB with the carrot and the stick approach is very effective. If you can say to them, you did a good job over here,
Right.
now let's carry it forward. So.
Well, I think, Mr. Brand, you would be the appropriate person to sort of figure out how that would be staged, if you will, the appropriate communications with our 2 elected officials, so they're sort of given the heads up on this. Then what would be the appropriate correspondence to the Air Board, and what is the appropriate correspondence to the surrounding identified rural counties in Northern California that would have similar concerns? And then you could figure out what would be the appropriate timing and order in which they would be notified of our concerns, and really covering that this is a graduated and more gradual approach, if you will, to compliance. It's not about not complying, it's about doing it in a more reasonable format for vehicles of limited use, of which, rural California is sort of the example. So I would recommend that I would hope that my colleagues would support you sort of undertaking that particular letter writing campaign and bringing those copies back to us.
I really agree with Supervisor Smith, but I want to ask, wasn't there some type of proposed ballot measure on AB 32 that would have turned some of this around, or what?
This is entirely separate from AB 32. AB 32 is greenhouse gas, and this is the diesel program. This was started 10 years ago, and this is just wrapping up when AB 32 is ramping up.
Okay,
so,
got it. I wasn't sure if it was a part of that or not.
The business people won't be put out of business because of the ARB rules, will be put out of business because of the greenhouse gas rules. So they'll eventually get everybody in the end.
Was that your comment,
No,
Supervisor?
I got another comment.
I'm gonna step back so
Chris,
that
you know, I wonder what the real problem is. You mentioned just a minute ago, or one of you mentioned that we have the 11th best air quality in the nation. And probably it would even be better than that, but most people, and this is for the listening audience, salty ocean air with a salt in it has got a particulate matter in it. So that goes against us as bad air quality. I would think when anybody goes to the ocean, takes a breath of that fresh ocean air, you think, boy, this is the air quality in the world. But actually, according to the ARB rules, you're breathing bad air. So if you took, because Mendocino County being next to the ocean, from that 11th place, where would that probably put us? Probably close to number 1, right?
I couldn't say for sure. I'd say that we'd be full attainment. And for example, northern Sonoma County, that air district does not have a monochrome.
So my point is here, we're not really regulating people for better air quality. Really, ultimately, what we're doing is this is just putting business people out of business, is what it's doing. This is not about regulation for better air quality. I could argue there's no way we could get better air quality. I mean, so what we're really doing is we're just regulating to put people out of business. That is the motion.
So, Supervisor Pinches, you said that is the motion?
That's the direction we're going in this state, is to put people out of business.
I don't think we were agendized for action on this.
Yeah, the motion,
but I can take
the motion is to drop all these unrealistic regulations.
Okay, Supervisor McCowan, I'd like to move this on,
Anybody wants to
please.
second that motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we've got consensus here to have staff prepare the appropriate letter and give further direction to us on how we can most be effective. And I certainly think we should be working through CSAC, and if they're not already out in front on this issue, then we probably ought to end our membership.
Thank you, Supervisor. So staff, you do have direction, and actually it's from the Board of Directors of the district, and
I will try to bring a letter back to the board for consideration as soon as possible.
okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to adjourn as the Air Quality Management District Board of Directors and reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. I had a gentleman that I spoke with at the restaurant. Mr. Dennis, did you want to come up for public comment? You said you might. Please, sir, approach the mic, enter your name for the record, and know you have 3 minutes.
My name is Ken Dennis. I'm retired, I'm 80 years old, but I have still concerns that haven't been addressed in Covelo for over 100 years. And that's the lack of fire protection water supply system. We have no hydrant system. And we have been losing buildings and structures. We've gone to over 300 medical ambulance calls for this year alone. And all the finances that's available is for a volunteer department to do the best that they can. But as far as protecting the town itself, the business people pay exorbitant fire insurance rates because we do not have any hydrants downtown here. The last one that was the liquor store in the corner over here had to lay a line clear from the fire department well down to supply water to fight that fire, and they lost that building. Last Saturday, one of our citizens lost her home because of the inability to have adequate fire protection. We have 10 districts under the guidance of the Board of Supervisors, and the subject has been brought up before in detail over providing sufficient water for fire protection for the downtown area here. But because of the lack of response of influential individuals, we've never been able to come up with the money. The biggest block for anything being done or having an interest by the people is that we can't afford it. We're just a small community. And I wanted to bring up this subject that's been over 100 years ago, was written in the Willits news on July 27th, 1905. Covelo is again a sufferer from fire conflagration here Tuesday night, doing damage of over $50,000 with insurance of about $15,000. From the meager reports, it's learned that the Covelo Hotel, Ruby Store, and 2 warehouses, W.H. Christ Residence, and Livery Stable, Super and Nasher Store, and F.E. Doyle Saloon, the Oberon was entirely destroyed. The fire broke out in the hotel, and as no adequate means were to be had, the flames spread rapidly and were not extinguished until the structures mentioned were destroyed. Covelo is a lively town situated in Round Valley, and it has been progressing rapidly of late. The fire is a serious loss, coupled with one last year, that better buildings and probably a water system and firefighting facilities will follow this disaster. To this day, we still do not have a water supply downtown here for protecting the business interests of this small community. I think that Potter Valley and Laytonville have better water resources than we do here for this town. And it's just a matter, I know that it doesn't compare with the invasion of the cartels problem here in this area, but a problem that was recognized over 100 years ago still to this day has not been accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor Pinches, do you have a very short comment?
Yeah, we had a discussion with it last week about some direction from the CEO's office to help these rural fire districts, help them with maybe a parcel, some help. And the CEO's office is actually working on that issue. So.
Thank you, sir. All right. Any more public comments, sir? Did you have something you wanted to get up and speak about?
Yes.
Please state your name for the record and know you have 3 minutes.
Okay, Henry Mangle. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming to Covelo. It's my first opportunity to see you all in person, so I really appreciate that and hope you come back more often. I just have a question regarding the Potter Valley project. Just wondering which of you supervisors are committed to removing the 2 dams in the Potter Valley project that are damming the Eel River.
I can answer you straight out. I am not.
You are not? Okay.
Absolutely not.
Nor I. If you want more water to be available for the eel during the dry months when it's needed most, you would support the Potter Valley project, not removal of the dams.
Okay. If you remove the Lake Pillsbury and Scott Dam at the head of the main section of the eel, in these months, in the late summer months, you would have the Eel River dry up here. That gives a continuous flow of water. That's what people to the north don't. I know there's a lot of folks in Humboldt County that say that they want the water up here to be left totally for the use in the eel, but yet they use most of the Eel River water down toward the mouth of the eel. And also in Humboldt County, they have the Mad River dammed up completely. It's called Ruth Lake for their water supply, but they want to deny Mendocino County 3% of the storage or the area of where the watershed, the use of that, and it only takes Mendocino County's use of that water is only a portion of that 3% of the watershed. So I don't think you're going to find support of any board members in the past or in the future that is to take away our water source to support maybe 1/10 of 1% of the flow in the eel, and probably and you can make the point, it's a scientific fact that if you've done away with Scott Dam that creates Lake Pillsbury, then you would have no water flow in the main stem of the eel at the upper reaches, where now you do have a continuous stream.
Supervisor Smith?
Well, this isn't really a question and answer.
Yeah,
This public comment is not
public
to
comment is
engage in
public
discussion
comment.
with
I chose,
supervisors.
excuse me, Supervisor Smith, I did choose to respond to you. And I am the chair, and the other supervisors, if they desire to respond, I think Supervisor McCowan did and Supervisor Pinches did. So I thank you for your comment. Your time is up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I guess, well, I need to announce that agenda item number 10, which is appointments to boards and commissions, the item will be continued to August 10th. So therefore, Ms. Angelos, your report, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board. You know, I'd like to report that we provide some services in Covelo that are necessary and have really shown the good work of the Health and Human Services Agency staff to really travel to Covelo and do what they can to provide services in the outlying areas. First Five and Healthy Kids Mendocino have been coming to Covelo on the third Wednesday of each month between the hours of 12 and 3, and actually working with the WIC clinic up here, Women, Infant, and Children, that comes to Covelo once a month as well. And the purpose is to assist women and children up here with applications for food stamps and with the Children's Health Initiative. And in July, our staff actually assisted 17 adults and 11 children with food stamp applications, and also 7 children with health insurance applications and 1 pregnant woman. And so just for 3 hours a month, they are really doing the best they can to work with the Covelo community. And in fact, they've been talking with the Round Valley Library and Commons now about using space here for monthly food distribution and food stamp sign-up days. So we're hoping that we can reach a partnership with that. On another note, I think, Madam Chair, you did mention the special session that we're having tomorrow at 10 o'clock in our board chamber. Also, I'd like to just mention that on August 17th, we will be talking with the board, doing a brief session on our movement towards our public meetings around public policy and priority setting around our budget for not so much this year, but for fiscal year 11-12. Let's see. And also, I have been going out to all of the departments and meeting with the staff and trying to reach all the departments before August 30th, which is our budget hearings. And there are also 3 meetings that are scheduled, one in Ukiah, one in Fort Bragg, and one in Willits, that again are all staff meetings on questions and answers around our budget, and particularly before our hearings on August 30th. So that's my report for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To our CEO, I think it would be good for the board to be informed on when those 3 meetings are, because in the past I did attend the Fort Bragg meeting, and I thought that it was useful to be able to observe staff interfacing with employees, so we have an understanding of what kind of information is being conveyed and what the interaction is and what employees are saying.
Okay.
So getting that schedule would be helpful.
Okay. Madam Chair, if I could just comment on that. There was an all-staff email that went out, and possibly the board didn't get it, but I can tell you on Monday, August 16th at the Social Services Building in Fort Bragg from 3 to 4 is the COAST meeting, and Thursday, August 19th from 1:30 to 2:30 is the meeting at the Willits Integrated Service Center, and Tuesday, August 24th at the Ukiah Valley Conference Center from 9 to 10. So those are the 3 all-staff meetings that are scheduled, and I would welcome any or all the supervisors to attend. Thank you.
I do remember seeing that.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor McCowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I got an inquiry from a member of an advisory board who is interested in attending, and of course the advisory boards play a fairly key role in assisting some of the departments, so would they be welcome to attend those meetings?
Yes, the advisory board members would be welcome. And if there are advisory board meetings this month, if my office is notified and I can arrange my calendar, I certainly would attend those meetings of the advisory boards.
Thank you.
Do we have any legislative items? Not today. Alrighty, and that's item 5B, so we'll move forward.
I got a
to-
legislative item. I could bring it up.
Sure.
Being as I
Supervisor
have
Pinches.
Assemblymember Chesbro's representative here, at the meeting, Sacramento Public Utilities, or the California Transportation Commission meeting about a month ago, Assemblymember Chesbro's rep stood up to the podium and told the CTC that he was against moving forward with the Willis bypass. He felt that the decision should have been continued. For the continuation from that meeting would have meant the project would have lost $120 million of federal money, and everybody in the room understood that. Why would Assemblymember Chesbro basically stand up and be opposed to the largest construction project in this history of Mendocino County? You know, he said that he was for the continuation of it, but his office full well knowingly that would kill the project if it was delayed past that date, because it would have meant the loss of $120 million of federal money, which would have stopped the project. So what was his reason for being opposed to that?
Ruth Valenzuela with Assemblyman Wesley Chesbro's office. I wish I had the statement in my hand so I could read it to you. There were a lot of people that misunderstood the statement. He's supportive of the Willits bypass. He's supportive of the jobs that were coming to the community, always has been for many years.
Ruth, I was there, and everybody in the room understood what he said.
I will forward you the...
Yeah, but everybody understood what he said.
Supervisor Pinches. If I can respond, that would be great. Everybody heard what they heard. I did forward the statement to both... I shouldn't say exactly who. I got some questions from people in the community. I forwarded the statement to those people. As soon as they read the statement, they understood that, yes, he was supportive of the bypass. His concern was environmental, that the environmental impacts were completely assessed and that the mitigation plan was complete before the CTC went ahead with their final approval. And afterwards, the assemblyman also spoke with all of the commissioners. They all understood completely. He forwarded the statement to them. So the statement has pretty much gone out to everybody.
So he communicated with
yes,
the
he has,
CTC commission.
each member individually. And I believe, I wasn't there, I wish I had been. I talked with Charlie Fielder afterward, and he said, I wish you'd been there. And the assemblyman has met with him in his office immediately after that meeting they met. And so I think it's more of the way it was said rather than what was said. I think there was a misunderstanding. But he is supportive of it. He wants the jobs, he wants the bypass, he always has. Okay. It's just, he's very clear on his really serious concerns about the environmental damage.
Thank you.
I couldn't let that pass.
Okay, we are on to item 6A, Department of Transportation, Director's Report. Does anyone have questions of the Department of Transportation? Seeing none?
What is left to do up here at the Round Valley Airport?
Tom Peterson, Department of Transportation. Our project for this year, 2009, it was completed the end of June. We reconstructed the runway, widened it, and installed a brand new runway lighting system. So that project is complete. We are working on some other phases of this project. One is a road realignment of South Airport Road off the west end of the runway. And we understand from FAA that funding for that project will probably not be available next year. So we're hoping to wrap that design project up, put on the shelf, so that if there's money does become available at short notice, that we can get that constructed. And that would be a safety project.
So you're doing the design right now of that project?
Yes, the design will probably be wrapped up on that in about a month.
So, thanks, Tom.
Thank you. I don't see any others. Thank you very much. Going on to agenda item 7A, Supervisors' reports, assigned boards, councils, commissions, other meetings attended. First thing I would like to bring up is under this particular item, I need to know from board members if there is a need for standing committees to meet Monday, August 9th. We won't have the criminal justice item ready, but there is none, so no standing committees next Monday.
At this, Madam Chair, at this point, I do not believe that we have any of the meetings scheduled. There were no items unless this board has something today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Supervisors, other reports? Supervisor Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple things to report on. I think per the chair's suggestion, we will have the NACO report, National Association of Counties, of which I am the representative of Mendocino County, and I will be reporting on that. I think it is on August 10th, bringing back some of the particulars that were discussed in both the workshops and a number of other meetings that I attended. So I believe that's going to be on.
Correct.
On for the 10th. We'll have a little more time at that point, and so I'm working with staff now to do a very brief agenda summary on that meeting, and I think it was a useful meeting, and the challenges other counties are facing, of course, are very similar to ours, and the discussions at the national level were I think disconcerting, but you know, the leadership, I think, of Valerie Brown and the organization has been very, very good, and I think by all accounts, everyone there really commended her leadership. She's stepping down after being the lead chair for the last year, this being NACO's 75th year as an association. I recently attended the Redwood Forest Foundation annual meeting. We meet once annually, usually in Branscombe. Assembly member Chesbro was there, as was Supervisor McCowan, and it was a very, very good and diverse community meeting with many interested parties from both Mendocino and Humboldt counties, talking about the much-needed conservation easement for the property to keep the working forest concept in this nonprofit moving forward. With, as most folks are probably aware, this has been totally financed by private funding dollars out of Bank of America, but as we all know, the timber industry being extremely challenged now, so is ownership of by the Redwood Forest Foundation. But the fundraising continues, getting the message out, getting more and more interested individuals. There was very good tribal representation because the tribal lands border a number of the acres in the Usal forest holding. So I think all in all, it was a very good meeting, talking about challenges and progress going forward. I recently attended the Marine Life Protection Act meeting. This was the regional stakeholders meeting. It was a 2-day meeting held in Fort Bragg, long and very detailed, very, very dedicated individuals. I attended only one portion of one day, but the commitment that all of them are showing by really going down this path, not just having a 2-day meeting, but they meet regularly for 2-day sessions, going forward, trying to reach agreement on the areas of protection and the areas for varied interests and varied uses, and trying to have that come into compliance with what's being asked for at the state level. So a very challenging process, as we've had many of those discussions before, and during one of the breaks, they decided to poll the members, and there were about 30 on this regional stakeholder group, and many were frustrated with the process, and they took another break and came back and said, we're really hearing that you don't think we're making progress at a fast enough speed, so we're going to sort of shift the agenda here today so we can get to some of the maps and try to get consensus on some of the mapping details. And they actually were able to do that, and it really showed that the group was really working together. So some individuals are still very frustrated. It is an open public meeting situation, so members of the press are there. Members of the public are free to be part of the meeting all day if they desire. And I believe that Supervisor Brown has now received a letter from, this is signed by Lester Snow, Secretary of Resources, but was the director, Ken Weissman, the Executive Director of MLPA, I think was very engaged in the process of the letter. And this is a response to our letter, writing with our community concerns, that individuals feeling that the concerns of Mendocino County residents be those of commercial fishing industry, recreational fishing industry, environmentalists, seaweed harvesters, that they were very concerned about the process. And so we have a response from that letter. And again, they're trying to deal with best they can under the vaguely keen Open Meetings Act, challenges to that. But from my observation, they really did let the public comment, and they did take some very, at times, harsh criticism for the actual team members, and I felt like they were able to really listen to that and still move forward with the process. So certainly a challenging one, and when it gets to the final agreements, I think it still will be challenging. But it was good to be able to witness it in Fort Bragg, and that they do come down fairly regularly to the Fort Bragg area. Usually I can't attend because I'm in Ukiah, but I was able to attend this meeting, and it was good seeing the various diverse stakeholders work together. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Supervisor Smith, and thank you for bringing up that letter. I think all supervisors received a copy. Okay. Appreciate it very much. I'd like to report that myself and also Supervisor McCowan went on a tour of Lake Mendocino yesterday. Miss Angelo was also there, and County Council attended. And this was actually sponsored, put on by Russian River Flood Control. Other sponsorships included Mendocino County Farm Bureau, Employers Council, and I think I'm missing one entity that...
Builders Exchange.
The North Coast Builders Exchange paid for the transportation, MTA transportation. But we were addressed by the U.S. Army Corps, Mike Dillabaugh, the Coyote Dam and flood control operations, the water supply operations, Sonoma County Water Agency with Jim Zambianini. We also toured Coyote Dam and their southern facilities, towers, spillway, hatchery, hydro plant, and the northern facilities after lunch, campgrounds, as well as the different boat launches, and saw how high the lake was, and the recreation taken out of operation for this year. It was a really, really good tour. They talked, it's an old dam, it's an old lake. They talked about the issues that we may have at this time with the dam itself, mainly with a spillway. There were indications that we're going to have to look at fixing it in the future. That's an ongoing study. This part of the Corps does, they're doing historical research right now, but it's the operations and maintenance side of the Corps, and they're able to get funding from Congress to do updates as well. Also, I'd like to remind everybody that Redwood Empire Fair is opening this week, and I know myself, and I'm assuming other supervisors will be attending the fair dinner on Thursday night. One flyer that I received, and I guess it's kind of a public announcement on water conservation, but the Redwood Valley County Water District will be putting on August 31st at Carducci Wine Cellars, 1 o'clock, a meeting for agriculture and egg ponds. If you have leaks, they want you to discover the newest techniques to stop them. Should be very good. Also the AWEB, and that's Carol Mandel from the Resource Management District will be there to also speak. Then there will be a guided tour of the constructed wetlands at Carducci Wine Cellars. Okay, Supervisor McCown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to add to the tour of the lake that it provided a very good overview of the history and purpose of the project, issues related to raising the dam, as Chair Brown mentioned, the spillway issue, which may need to be addressed even to accommodate a flood with the dam at its current height. The spillway is doesn't accommodate the level of flow that it needs to accommodate. So that may need to be addressed whether the dam is raised or not. But it also provided answers to a lot of questions like, why did they let water out of the lake? And Decision 1610 governs that. Why isn't dredging a viable alternative to raising the dam? And then also they explained the new management regime whereby they're retaining significantly more water in the lake. And of course, that's why so many of the recreational facilities are currently flooded. They do intend to, I think, make these tours an ongoing feature, and it really helps to be able to get a lot of people together from various boards and commissions and the public, and be able to get their questions answered. So what is also encouraging is that I think it's probably fair to say there's a greater level of cooperation between the Army Corps, Sonoma County Water Agency, the Flood Control District, and the county than we've seen at any time in the past. So that's all very encouraging. The other report I have is that the Solid Waste Ad Hoc Committee did meet last week, both with county staff, which included County Counsel Janine Nadell, Director of Transportation Howard DeShiel, and Solid Waste Director Mike Sweeney. CEO Carmel Angelo was unavailable that day. But we met, discussed the issues, then we met with representatives of Solid Waste of Willits, discussed the issues with them, and reached an agreement in principle for how to, for having Solid Waste of Willits take over management of 5 county-operated transfer stations, excluding Casper. So we expect that the contracts that would provide for all of that will be coming forward to the board on August 17th. Also, something of a companion measure that it will get to the board earlier will be a discussion of cancellation of the Casper JPA. That, according to the agreement, if it is to be done, needs to be done prior to August 17th. Therefore, it needs to be on our agenda August 10th. The intent behind it is not necessarily to wind up with a cancellation of the agreement, but to at least initiate a discussion on, if the JPA is going to continue, here's how it needs to be amended and updated, because I think everyone agrees that having last been amended in 1993, having been in effect since 1977, it's overdue to amend it at a minimum.
Thank you, Supervisor McCowan. Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To your comments, Supervisor McCowan, I thank you for reporting on the ad hoc committee process. I had asked Mike Sweeney, had there been any progress, what was happening? He said, pursuant to the negotiations, there was not to be any disclosure on what had taken place. So I appreciate that you reported on some of the parameters of that. With respect to Casper, I think it's important that the county realize, and that the Board of Supervisors realizes that, you know, we jointly operate Casper with the city of Fort Bragg, and we shouldn't be thinking of doing anything in a unilateral fashion. In other words, if there's going to be any contract changes, that needs to be something that is worked out, I think, in the open meeting committee process with the city and the county. We have a joint committee pursuant to the agreement, and I think that we need to be mindful that we have partners that are full partners. And I think they should be treated as such with respect to the continuation of the agreement. I think they have recognized and stated recently in the city council meeting that they also think that the agreement absolutely needs to be renegotiated and changed. So I think there's agreement by all parties that it's in serious need of update. But I think it's also important that we remember that we're not sole actors in this. We really need to be working with the other entity. So it's not in an adversarial framework, but it's in a framework of how do we best manage the facility for the citizens of Mendocino County.
Thank you Supervisor Smith. Doesn't appear any other reports are coming forward. Is there anyone here in the audience that would like to come up and do a final public expression? Seeing no one, the board is going to go on the tour now, and we will adjourn after the tour. So, thank you very much.
So where are we going?
Supervisor McCowan just brought up something, sir.
It's, just so the record is clear, with regard to item 12 on the consent calendar, we did receive those bids, I think yesterday. So the consent calendar action would incorporate the bid information that we were provided.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just a note on that, it was a Covelo company that got the job.
Well, that's a good way to find out.